Chapter 440. On Murphy's micro-broadcasting, the battlefield in the comment section was still in a heated battle of words. Murphy's fans and Yang Yi's fans formed two opposing forces, neither giving way to the other. In the beginning, Yang Yi's fans did maintain restraint, but later, they completely lost control. They could not scold Murphy, so they angrily attacked the person supported by Murphy's fans, Mu Ziyang. However, just as they were arguing, the fans who were watching the concert at the front line sent back news. Stop arguing, Mu Ziyang and Yang Yi are the same person. When the first person said that, Murphy's fans did not believe it at all. Mu Ziyang's real name is Liang. What does he have to do with Yang Yi? Even if it's **T, don't make it up like that. Mu Ziyang's real name was Liang. This rumor seemed to have come from a certain variety show. However, after the nonsensical tabloids reported it carelessly, and after word of mouth was full of mistakes, many people actually believed this rumor to be true. This was also why when Yang Yi appeared, no one thought of the possibility that he was Mu Ziyang. However, very soon, the fans who were watching the concert at the front line sent back more and more information. The statement that Yang Yi was Mu Ziyang also appeared at the front line of the battlefield. This made the two groups of people who were arguing unable to continue, and they all understood the truth. It should be true. I have a friend who was watching the concert. I just called him and asked. He said that when Murphy announced this news, everyone was stunned. On micro-broadcasting, the two groups of people were also stunned. Yang Yi was Mu Ziyang? Then why were we arguing before? It was like a flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple, not acknowledging our own family. Now the credibility of this news was getting higher and higher. Although it was only Murphy's side of the story, it could be said that it was a fact. One had to know that in this world, if a public figure said such things, they would have to bear the legal responsibility. If Yang Yi was not Mu Ziyang and impersonated him, he would be sent to jail if he was found out. Moreover, if Yang Yi was impersonating Mu Ziyang, then Murphy would have offended the real Mu Ziyang. It was not worth it to pay such a heavy price for such a lie. Just as the two groups of people gave up and looked at each other awkwardly, the people in front of them finally remembered something else. Previously they had only been focused on the news that Yang Yi is Mu Ziyang. Yang Yi's singing is so good that I thought he was a real singer. It's such a pity that he didn't debut. Murphy and Yang Yi sang a new song at the concert. The two of them sang a duet. It was super nice and sweet. Could it be because of the power of love? The speed at which he releases songs has also increased. A new song? Many netizens expressed their envy, jealousy, and hatred. Moreover, some fans who had bought tickets but did not go because of the gossip were so angry that their intestines turned green with regret. That was not the only news. The people in front of them were too happy. They proudly spread the second-hand news to others. Murphy's daughter is super cute. It turns out that she and Yang Yi have known each other for 5 to 6 years. They actually hid it from the world for so long. It turns out that the newspaper guessed that Murphy's previous retirement was because she wanted to have a child. That was not wrong. I really admire Murphy's courage. Yang Yi is also super handsome. Just look at the photo that was exposed. I think he is very stylish in person. Moreover, his singing is so good. I wonder when he will debut. One after another, shocking news was thrown out. Finally, the two groups of people who had been happily scolding each other quietly retreated. Murphy's fans were very embarrassed. They felt that they had been scolding for 2 days, only to realize that they had made a big mistake. A small number of people apologized sincerely, but most of them could only choose to pretend that nothing had happened. As for Yang Yi's fans, although they had retreated from the battlefield, they seemed to have forgotten that they had previously scolded Mu Ziyang. They arrogantly returned to Yang Yi's personal forum, as if they had returned victorious. They proudly discussed Yang Yi's new identity. Almighty Yang Yi is indeed a genius. He is good at writing books and is so good at writing songs. I went to listen to his songs, and they were all very good. This is a real composer. I just want to know, is there anything that Almighty Yang Yi can't do? He doesn't know how to do a signing. Someone said bitterly. However, someone quickly said, Almighty Yang Yi has been very low-key before. It's probably because he doesn't want his relationship with Murphy to be exposed. Now that he is half a public figure, can't he do a signing for us? That's right. That's very likely. The fans excitedly tagged the staff of Sahara Publishing, hoping to get a satisfactory answer from them. However, they couldn't get a reply from Yang Yi for the signing for the time being. Yang Yi had other things to do. At night, as Murphy's concert was coming to an end, many media outlets noticed the defection of Murphy's fans. Many people also leaked the news to the media. Such a shocking piece of news made many media reporters feel incredulous. They all tried to verify it. However, they didn't need to verify it. At around 11 p.m., Murphy's micro-broadcasting was updated. It should be written by Mo Shawan, who introduced the situation of Yang Yi being Mu Xiang. She also explained and apologized to the public for concealing the truth before. In the end, of course, it was Mo Fei who specially asked the media and fans to give Cici the space to grow freely. Attached to the Weibo post was a picture of a family of 3 on stage, which was taken by the photographer on the scene. Retreat. Get me a new headline right now. Who knew how many reporters from various media outlets would have to work overtime tonight? Sure enough, the next day, all the major newspapers and entertainment tabloids were talking about Murphy's marriage, and the fact that Yang Yi was Mu Xiang. In fact, before the mobile internet was fully developed, many people still relied on newspapers to get information about the outside world. So when people woke up early in the morning to read the headlines, their jaws almost dropped. Damn, Mu Xiang and Yang Yi are the same person? Then why did Yang Yi have such a stage name? However, Yang Yi didn't want to explain that. It would become an unsolved mystery in history. However, it could be said that after one night, the direction of public opinion had changed. Originally, there was a group of people who were gloating that Murphy would suffer a great loss in the storm of public opinion. But now many people were congratulating Murphy and wishing her a happy marriage. They also hoped that she and Yang Yi could have more works. Of course, the heat of the matter hadn't died down yet. On Monday, the Hong Kong media reported that when they interviewed Chen Yijie gave an answer to the matter. Haha, yes, Mu Xiang is Yang Yi. I knew it long ago. And I know that he and Murphy are a couple. But Mr. Mu Xiang asked me not to tell anyone about it. I had been holding it in for a long time, but now I can finally say it. With Chen Yijie's confirmation, no one doubted the fact that Yang Yi was Mu Xiang anymore. However, Yang Yi, who was at the center of public opinion, had already returned to Jiangcheng. Murphy had to attend some business activities in Shanghai, so he and Shishi came back first. Although the matter of the exposure had been properly resolved, Yang Yi wasn't happy. He wanted to find the person who stabbed him in the back. Who did it? Chapter 441. Tianmei had been investigating internally for a few days, but they couldn't find any clues. Zhu Jie blamed himself, so he stopped the recording of that night and stayed in his office. Through the crack in the door, he used a mirror to look at the simple office on the other side of the corridor. If you have the time to spy on people, why don't you listen to my arrangements and participate in this month's popular variety show? As long as you ask, Sister Ling can definitely arrange it for you. Du Luan said helplessly as he played with his phone. What do you know? Zhu Jie said without turning his head. I have to give Mu Xiang an explanation. Didn't he already give you a song? Who cares? Just sing this song well and earn what you need to earn. Du Luan said as he plugged his phone into the charging cable, then stood up and stretched. I said that I would help him solve this problem, but in the end, this photo was leaked to the media by that bastard. Not only did it not solve the problem, but it also made a mess for him. Zhu Jie was thirsty, so he closed the door and poured himself a glass of water. He then explained, if I didn't help him find that person, how could I sing this song with a clear conscience? Plus, I still want his second song. Then why are you spying on Jianchua? Didn't you already rule her out as a suspect? Du Luan asked. Anyway, I think she's suspicious. The USB flash drive has been with her for the longest time, so she's the most likely person to steal it. Zhu Jie was tired from standing, so he simply moved a chair and sat by the door to continue spying. Du Luan rubbed his eyebrows and said helplessly, I think you should give Mu Xiang's, Yang Yi's, email address to his teacher. That's all we can find. Anyway, the matter has been solved, and the gossip has stopped. There's no need to continue investigating. Zhu Jie waved his hand and said, "Don't talk to me like that. If you don't want to help, then get lost." "Hey, Duluan, why do I feel like you're getting more and more arrogant recently? You're not usually like this." Zhu Jie was still loyally helping Yang Yi find the culprit, but Yang Yi didn't know. He had just returned from Shanghai and was very dissatisfied with the feedback from Zhu Jie and Tianmei. He even felt that Zhu Jie and Tianmei's people were playing with him. It was true that a profit-seeking paparazzi hunter was quite suspicious, but Yang Yi felt that Tianmei's people were also quite suspicious. Outsiders are always unreliable. If I want to find out the truth, I have to do it myself. After Yang Yi returned to Jiang City, he coaxed Xixi, who was exhausted from the long journey, to sleep. Then he went to the study to tidy up some equipment. As a professional habit, Yang Yi dug out a secret compartment in the study and hid some tools just in case. For example, there were some scattered parts inside that could be assembled into a pistol. There was also a box of yellow bullets. Yang Yi had bought all of these on the black market, so he probably wouldn't need them. However, Yang Yi felt that it would always be better to keep himself and his family a secret. There were also some parts that were also bought from the black market. After Yang Yi's modification, they could be made into mobile remote control surveillance equipment, just like in the movies. Of course, there were also real sharp knives that could cut through iron like mud. Although Yang Yi also knew how to use a gun, he was an expert in cold weapons. With a knife in hand, he was a killer. However, he didn't need to use the murder weapon yet. What Yang Yi needed to tidy up was some surveillance equipment. He wanted to keep an eye on Niu Meiling and Jian Chua. As for Zhu Jie, Yang Yi had lost trust in him, so he decided to install surveillance equipment on him again, so that he could find out who the real mastermind was. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't force it like the last time. He felt that he couldn't alert the enemy, so he had to do it quietly. Just as Yang Yi was thinking about the surveillance plan, he suddenly remembered that he had left a listening device with Zhu Jie's agent. Let's listen to what Du Luan said. Maybe he knows some of Zhu Jie's secrets. Yang Yi felt that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of this. After all, if Zhu Jie was really that shrewd, he wouldn't have said it in front of his agent. But maybe he could catch the fish that escaped the net? So, Yang Yi searched for the recordings on his computer. However, the recordings were only from the last 3 days. Yang Yi could only start from 3 days ago, which was Friday. Friday was the day that the news of Murphy's wedding was exposed. Yang Yi couldn't find any clues. The only relevant recording was that Zhu Jie asked Du Luan if Jian Chua was in the office. As for what Zhu Jie said to Jian Chua, Yang Yi didn't know at all. The next day's recording, Yang Yi fast-forwarded it. When he heard the conversation between Zhu Jie and Du Luan, he slowed it down to a normal speed. This wasn't a recording of a phone call. It was in the office, so Du Luan might have put his phone in his pocket. So the conversation between the two was muffled. Luckily, Yang Yi had bought a voice processing software from the black market. After processing it, he could barely hear their conversation. Zhu Jie told Du Luan about Niu Meiling and Jian Chua's conclusion after questioning them. It was probably the paparazzi hunter who sold the goods to both parties. However, Yang Yi also heard Zhu Jie angrily express that he didn't trust Jian Chua. He felt that Jian Chua was still very suspicious. The conversation between the two was more detailed. Through Du Luan's questioning, Zhu Jie basically repeated the content of yesterday's meeting. However, Yang Yi was now skeptical of Zhu Jie's words. He felt that any kind of solemn vow was hypocritical, and any kind of sincere words were like a lie full of loopholes. The recording took a lot of time. Before he knew it, it was already evening. Yang Yi had to stop and prepare dinner for Xixi, bathe her, and put her to sleep. When Xixi fell asleep, he continued. Originally, Yang Yi thought that it was impossible to find the fish that had escaped the net. Suddenly, on Saturday night, Du Luan's recorded phone call made Yang Yi's eyes widen. It's okay. I told you it'll be fine. They couldn't find any loopholes in our plan. They thought it was that teacher who went back on his word. Haha. Zhu Jie? Zhu Jie is a big idiot. He's so stupid that he still thinks that your manager is the one who leaked the photos. No, he would never think that it was me. And you, if you didn't open the door for me and unlock the drawer, I wouldn't have been able to get the USB flash drive. Okay, Zhen. Did I say that I wouldn't give you the money? According to our previous agreement, I'll take 70% and you take 30%. After all, other than being strong, I was also the one who came up with the idea. I'll give you the money. How can I go back on my word? It's just that the bank transfer is too big of a target, so it's not worth it. I'll withdraw it bit by bit now. When your new album hits the charts, I'll give you a big bag of cash directly. Later, after Duluan hung up the phone, he was still mumbling something about a money-hungry B***TCH. Yang Yi couldn't take it anymore. He dragged the progress bar forward until he finished listening to every word of the phone call. Yang Yi finally understood what was going on. F***CK. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. Yang Yi only wanted to hear if Zhu Jie had revealed any tricks in private. He didn't expect that he would accidentally find the person who set him up. This Duluan, he didn't expect it. He didn't expect that he was the real mastermind. Zhen was also despicable, but at most, she could only be considered an accomplice. But how could it be him? Yang Yi had too little information. He only knew that Duluan had profited a lot from this incident. He didn't know that Duluan had risked his life to steal Murphy's news for money. It all started after Zhu Jie became popular. But to make a long story short, Duluan had earned some money from Zhu Jie. He wanted to earn more, so he invested his money in the stock market. At first, he was lucky and earned a lot, but the good times didn't last long. The stocks he bought fell. Duluan, who was addicted to the stock market and wanted to earn back his money, unknowingly spent more. Finally, the stocks were stuck again. And Duluan realized that he didn't have enough money to spend. After Zhu Jie's new year, he didn't start working again. Duluan could only worry and live on his basic salary. Just then, Zhu Jie told Duluan that Niu Meiling had spent 500,000 to buy the USB flash drive, and Duluan started to have other ideas. While Zhu Jie and Niu Meiling were in a stalemate, Duluan contacted Zhen, who he had a close relationship with. With Zhen as a spy, Duluan easily copied the information from the USB flash drive. Then, he sold the information to the entertainment tabloid. Don't underestimate Murphy's influence. Although it was second-hand information, Duluan still sold it for 600,000. Plus, he told Zhen that he sold it for 400,000. No wonder Yang Yi was so focused on Zhu Jie that he didn't notice that Duluan had been trying to get information from Zhu Jie. Now that he thought about it, the recording had many flaws. But no matter why Duluan did this, Yang Yi could finally breathe a sigh of relief. On one hand, he found the mastermind, and on the other hand, Yang Yi could clear Zhu Jie's suspicion. This young master was a little retarded, but he was still loyal. Now, what Yang Yi had to consider was how to solve Duluan's problem. Yang Yi's first solution was to give the recording of Duluan and Zhen scolding Zhu Jie for being an idiot to Zhu Jie, and let Zhu Jie chase Duluan away. But if it was just this, wouldn't it be too easy to let him go? Yang Yi couldn't vent the anger in his heart. Moreover, Yang Yi thought of an important problem. Duluan knew about his deal with Zhu Jie. If Zhu Jie chased Duluan away, Duluan would have no other choice. He might break the pot and reveal other things. This is really troublesome. Yang Yi gritted his teeth and walked around in the study. Why don't I just kill him? Yang Yi's eyes flickered. He caressed the sharp blade that he took out when he was organizing the equipment, and his whole body emitted a cold aura. However, when Yang Yi was thinking about some bad things, someone was also thinking about killing him. Chapter 442. In the vast Texas of the United States of America, a tall man with a pipe in his mouth and a wide-brimmed felt hat, dressed like a cowboy in the movies, followed behind on a horse. In front of him, 6 real cowboys with black and white skin were riding on horses, helping him herd the hundreds of Angus cattle on the farm to graze on the grassland that was growing well in spring. "Mo, you can go back. Leave this to us." An old white cowboy in his 50s or 60s, but he was in a good mental state, rode his horse over. He took off his hat and wiped his sweat as he spoke. The sun in the afternoon was too strong, and the boss's body was not as strong as the local cowboy's. The old cowboy was worried that the boss would not be able to take it. "Ford, look after these kids for me." Emohenian pointed at the dark-skinned, hornless Angus cattle and nodded at the old cowboy. After that, he pulled the reins and turned around to head back to the farm's residence. Emohenian had bought this farm for almost 20 years. It was originally a wasteland, but after 20 years of operation, it had changed drastically. Along the way, there was a fertile grassland. Although it was originally a grassland, after many years of modification, the weeds had been removed and high-quality pasture had been planted. Whether it was for grazing or harvesting for winter, it was a good choice. Of course, the sun was a little strong today, so Emohenian chose to go to the woods at the side to avoid the heat. These original woods were left behind by Emohenian. Not only could they provide shelter for people and cattle, but they could also maintain the ecological balance of this land. Close to the residential area, there were dozens of acres of land planted with cotton and sorghum. Of course, there were still lush early seedlings. The dozens of acres of land were all mechanized. There were all kinds of machines in Emohenian's warehouse, such as tractors, planters, combined harvesters, hay balers, and so on. A few years ago, Emohenian did not want to be outdone. He drove the tractor and worked with the hired cowboys in the field. But now he could only be a supervisor. Most of the practical work was left to the professional cowboys hired by the farm. Uncle _ a half-grown black lad, shirtless, was coming out of the pond dripping with water. When he saw Emohenian, he quickly lowered his head obediently, as if he had done something wrong. "Greg, you sneaked out to swim again. I'll tell your father later and let him beat you to death." Emohenian shouted angrily. "I'm sorry, Uncle Emo, I was wrong. I'm going back to work now." The young black man scowled miserably and ran away. Greg was the son of a cowboy on Emohenian's farm. Although he was black, Missouri-Henian had watched him grow up. Emohenian treated him as his own nephew. Therefore, even though Emohenian had purposely pulled a long face earlier, the old man had no intention of telling on him at all. However, Emohenian's temper was usually very irritable. Greg was very afraid and was scolded. Emohenian was in a good mood after successfully playing a prank. He laughed heartily and continued to ride his horse back to his residence. Emohenian's house was built later. It was originally a wooden building with a Western style. Later, Emohenian felt that it was uncomfortable to live in, so he remodeled it into a modern house with a Chinese style. Don't underestimate Emohenian. In his early years, Emohenian was still an architectural designer. Otherwise, how could he have the money to emigrate and buy a large farm? Although he had changed his profession to become a farm owner, Emohenian had no problem designing a house for himself. From the outside, the unique courtyard had the feeling of an ancient garden. There were flowing water, small bridges, stone carvings, and window carvings. Of course, in order to be compatible with Western culture, the courtyard was not enclosed. Instead, it was wide open and did not have the restrictive feeling of a wall. The house was also made of white walls and black tiles. The weather in Texas was hot, so the design of the house was ventilated. It was warm in winter and cool in summer. The design of the cornices also restored the unique spirituality of ancient architecture. Of course, the interior of the house was more modern. There were ceramic tiles, glass walls, brilliant and bright lights, and so on. Emohenian was not a pedantic architectural designer. He could fuse ancient elements with a modern and comfortable living environment. Don't think that a Chinese-style building in a large farm would stand out and be despised by others. The farm owners from the same town came here as guests. When they saw Emohenian's mansion, each one was more envious than the other. They all rushed to ask Emohenian to design a house for them. Emohenian went a little too far. When he returned home, he found that his wife was not there. "Where did Madam go?" Emohenian asked the housekeeper at home. "I don't know. She took a call and hurried out." The housekeeper shook her head. "But there were some notes left beside the phone. I don't know if Madam still needs them, so I didn't get rid of them." Emohenian was just asking casually, but the housekeeper's words made him a little curious. He went to take a look at the notes. On the sticky notes, the first page was still Mo Henian's own handwriting and Zhou Mingyu's handwriting. There were a few other pages that were filled with trivial matters. Mo Henian flipped through them until he reached the last page of the sticky notes. Zhou Mingyu had written a name and a line of words on the sticky notes. Yang Yi. However, the word "e" was crossed out and a word "e" was added next to it. For some reason, when Mo Henian saw this name, he vaguely felt displeased. Perhaps it was because Shishi's surname was Yang and not Mo? Mo Henian was not very fond of this surname all these years. And the next line of words made Mo Henian feel a little puzzled. The domestic media broke the news and the internet domain news has been reprinted. What did that mean? Mo Henian frowned. The domestic media referred to China? Could it be that something happened to his daughter in China? He still knew about the internet domain news. It was a domestic news portal. Sometimes, if he wanted to know about the domestic news, Mo Henian would also go there to take a look. The old man's curiosity grew. He simply took the note to the study, turned on the computer, and logged into the internet domain news website to read. However, the old man could not find any Yang Yi on the first page. Mo Henian did not have the patience to slowly search. He directly went to the internet domain search function and typed the two words, Yang Yi, into the computer with great difficulty. Fortunately, this was their family's computer. Otherwise, there really was no Chinese input method. Not long after, several news articles popped up. The title of the first article was shockingly written. Yang Yi is Mu Xiang? Murphy and he were secretly married for 6 years? Mo Henian's eyes almost popped out. The following news articles fanned the flames even more. Breaking news. Murphy's husband is not a nobody. Yang Yi is actually a best-selling author. It's a done deal. Murphy's marriage certificate photo has also been exposed. The super popular singer Murphy is already married and has a child. What is the background of this lucky man Yang Yi? Appearing at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau with a strange man. Murphy has actually stepped into the marriage hall. Mo Henian's face darkened. He clicked on these news articles one by one, and finally saw the report where Murphy admitted that Yang Yi was Yang Shi's biological father. Chapter 443. Looking at the picture. The strange man was smiling and looking at his daughter and granddaughter with a cunning expression. Mo Henian's breathing became as heavy and rapid as a red-eyed Angus cow. Finally, you've appeared. Mo Henian clenched his teeth and slammed his fist on the table. He clearly remembered how Murphy looked when she returned to the farm 5 years ago when she was pregnant. When he interrogated her, she refused to say anything and even hid in her room to cry secretly. If it weren't for the fact that Cece was born, and the little girl's childish murmurs calmed him down temporarily, Mo Henian didn't know when he would be able to let go of the displeasure in his heart. But now he had appeared again. Mo Henian's resentment and anger rose again. This bastard made his daughter pregnant out of wedlock and raised the child alone for 3 to 4 years. He had already abandoned her once. What was the point of reuniting now? Could he still cover up the fact that he was a scumbag? Mo Henian couldn't help it. He stood up abruptly and accidentally overturned the chair under his butt. However, the old man had no intention of helping him up. He angrily went to his bedroom and took out an old model Remington M870 from the locked gun cabinet. It had a long barrel and a classic horizontal anti-skid wooden handguard. It looked no different from an antique. However, Mo Henian took out a few red-headed copper-bottomed shotgun shells from the cartridge box and stuffed them into the magazine with gritted teeth. With a click, he pushed the cylinder and pushed the shotgun shells into the firing position. This antique gun had astonishingly turned into a great killing machine. If I don't destroy this bastard, my surname isn't Mo. Mo Henian gritted his teeth and put the gun aside, and began to pack his clothes. Ah Ming, you're too much. Fei got married and you didn't tell me anything. Did you forget me, your best friend? Or are you worried that I can't afford the wedding gift? Murphy's mother, Zhou Mingyu, was also dumbfounded when she received a half-congratulatory, half-reproachful call from her former friends in the entertainment industry. After a series of questions, Zhou Mingyu understood the ins and outs of the matter. Of course, Zhou Mingyu's feelings towards Yang Yi were similar to Mo Henian's. It was just that she was calmer and wouldn't be so irascible as to make a move without clarifying the situation. She also knew Mo Henian's temper, so after Zhou Mingyu put down the phone, she didn't dare to continue calling at home. Instead, she put on her windbreaker, grabbed her handbag, and hurried out of the house with her phone. She went to a coffee shop in town to call her daughter. However, Zhou Mingyu did not expect that Mo Henian would see her scribbling on a piece of paper out of habit. Furthermore, Mo Henian even followed the vine to the melon. At this time, the unaware Zhou Mingyu called Murphy. However, the person that answered the phone was Mo Xiaowan. Mo Xiaowan seemed to be very surprised by Zhou Mingyu's call. She was even a little panicked. She stammered, "Auntie, are you looking for me? Wait, are you looking for Sister Fei? She's busy right now. She's attending an event." A woman's senses were still very sensitive. Zhou Mingyu could hear Mo Xiaowan's panic, so she asked suspiciously, "You know why I'm calling, right?" Mo Xiaowan stammered, unable to speak. How could she not have guessed? It was just that before, whether it was her, Murphy, or Yang Yi, they were all busy dealing with the crisis of public opinion brought about by this exposure. They didn't think about Murphy's parents' reaction at all. When she picked up Zhou Mingyu's call, Mo Xiaowan instantly thought of it. That's right. The media was already stirring up a storm. Even if her uncle lived abroad in the countryside, even if her aunt had left the entertainment industry for many years, their news wouldn't be completely blocked out. No matter what, so many days had passed. It was impossible that they hadn't heard anything at all. Zhou Mingyu wasn't in the mood to play a guessing game with Mo Xiaowan. She then said in a reproachful tone, "That's enough, Xiaowan. This child, you're becoming more and more disobedient to your aunt. Murphy's marriage is such a big deal, and you didn't even tell me?" Mo Xiaowan stammered, "Auntie, you can't blame me for this. Sister Fei was worried that uncle would find out about the news and wouldn't be able to sit still and fight with Yang Yi, right? So she didn't know how to tell you. Then this time, for some reason, the media exposed it. Sai, the two of you are really going to piss me off." Zhou Mingyu said angrily, "All right, let's not talk about you. Now tell me, who exactly is this Yang Yi? Is he Shishi's father? What's his character like?" If it had been Mo Xiaowan a few months ago, she might have added insult to injury for Yang Yi. However, Mo Xiaowan had already changed sides. Moreover, Yang Yi was her financial backer and boss, so she could only try her best to put in a good word for Yang Yi. He's Shishi's father, her biological father. Yang Yi actually has a good relationship with Sister Fei. He's not bad too. He's from a village in Anyang province, and he used to be a soldier. When she heard this, Zhou Mingyu frowned. She felt that something was amiss. It wasn't that she looked down on people from the village, but she felt that Yang Yi and Murphy's backgrounds were too different, which would lead to a huge gap between the two of them. Their personalities, hobbies, and so on were incompatible. Think about it, a soldier from a village and a female celebrity who came back from abroad and was accepting new things in the entertainment industry. How many common topics could they have? Fortunately, Mo Xiaowan's next words changed Zhou Mingyu's opinion. But Yang Yi is still very good. He wrote his own novels, which sold very well, and earned a lot of money. He also knows music, so he personally wrote songs for Sister Fei. Auntie, did you know? Not long ago, Sister Fei's album sold platinum again, and in this album, there were 12 songs written by Yang Yi. Mo Xiaowan tried her best to talk about Yang Yi. That's not bad. After all, Zhou Mingyu had been in the entertainment industry. She knew that it was difficult to get a platinum album. And she also knew that a songwriter who could write 12 songs in a platinum album was definitely capable. Her frown relaxed a little. Zhou Mingyu's call with Mo Xiaowan lasted for more than an hour. She kept asking about Yang Yi's situation, trying to get a comprehensive understanding of her daughter's choice of husband from an outsider's point of view. When she returned to the farm, she saw Mo Henian angrily carrying his bag out the door. "Old Mo, what are you going to do?" Zhou Mingyu had an ominous feeling in her heart. Did he know? "I'm going back to the country to kill that kid." Mo Henian waved the Remington in his hand and said angrily, "He hid like a turtle for a few years, and this time I finally caught him." Sure enough, he knew. But now was not the time to ask how he knew. Zhou Mingyu hurriedly stopped Mo Henian and said, "Old Mo, don't worry. Your blood pressure is high, and the doctor said you can't be angry." Move. Mo Henian glared and said, "If I can't vent my anger, I won't be able to die in peace." Mo Henian was different from Yang Chonggue. He was more stubborn and irritable. Zhou Mingyu's persuasion had no effect on him. "Hey, put the gun down first. You're going back to the country. Why are you still carrying a gun?" Zhou Mingyu had to change her way of persuading. "I'm going to kill that bastard." Mo Henian glared and said, "But you can't bring it back. Do you think he'll let you bring a gun on the plane?" Zhou Mingyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mo Henian was stunned for a moment. Thinking about it carefully, it was true. So he took a step back and stuffed the gun into his wife's hand and said, "I won't bring the gun. I'll go buy a kitchen knife and chop him up." Zhou Mingyu said softly, "Henian, don't worry, okay? Listen to me, it's not what you think. No matter what you say, I only believe what I see. This bastard abandoned his wife and child and harmed our Murphy for 5 years. Don't you think so?" Mo Henian said, "You're not wrong, but now, no matter what he did to make up for it, I look down on him as a person. He harmed our daughter. Don't tell me I shouldn't beat him up?" Mo Henian interrupted Zhou Mingyu angrily. Zhou Mingyu could only use her hand to comfort Mo Henian's chest and let him breathe slowly. She said with a bitter smile, Yes, you should beat him up. But you have to think about it this way. He's a junior, and you're an elder. How can an elder look for a junior? No matter what, you have to let him come here and ask for punishment, right?" Her words made sense, and Mo Henian was convinced. However, Mo Henian was only shaken for a moment, and immediately became firm again. "No, he's a damn junior. I don't treat him as one of us. He's just a bastard who deserves a beating. All right, don't say anything. I have to go back." Chapter 444. The next morning, Yang Yi sent Shishi to the kindergarten. However, as soon as he drove out of Jiangqing Media University, Yang Yi noticed 2 groups of people following him. Yang Yi frowned. Although he knew that they were paparazzi and were not dangerous, it was still very annoying. "It seems like I have to change my car." Yang Yi knew that his tyrant was too big of a target. It would be better to buy a normal car so that it would be easier for him to travel. No, he might have to buy a few cars at once. He could even take turns driving so that the paparazzi would not know what he was doing. As for what he was going to do with his tyrant after buying a new car, of course, it was impossible for him to throw it away. Yang Yi planned to leave it for Ding Xiang, who was learning how to drive, to buy groceries, coffee beans in the future. Not only do I have to change my car, but I also have to move. Yang Yi thought as he stepped on the accelerator and weaved through the morning rush hour, shaking off the 2 groups of paparazzi who were following him. Now the media was more interested in Yang Yi, a songwriter who could write songs, than Murphy. In less than 2 days, they had dug up the microfilm fairy tale and found out the details that were deeply hidden in it. For example, Yang Yi and Mu Xiang's names appeared in the same frame for the first time. However, no one would have thought that the 2 names were actually the same person. For example, Yang Yi and Shishi made cameo appearances in the microfilm. However, the camera only flashed past and most people ignored the father and daughter duo who were doing nothing in the hospital. For example, there was another scene where Su Shishir was reading a book of fairy tales. The camera even gave a close-up of the cover of the book. Now, everyone knew that it was Shishi's bedtime story written by Yang Yi. However, at that time, many people were only focused on the joke of Su Shishir crying to Guang, saying, "You're so fat, you can't be my prince." So, not only were the paparazzi waiting for Murphy, but they were also waiting for Yang Yi. According to Yang Huan, who was very alert, there had been a few strange people in the cafe over the past few days. Therefore, Yang Yi could not continue to live in this small building. Otherwise, the paparazzi would probably come to their house and rummage through their trash can. It was all because of this Duluan. When Yang Yi thought of him, he clenched his teeth in hatred. But now he was still hesitating whether he should break the law in this world. Duluan didn't deserve to die, but Yang Yi had his own set of rules. He could ignore Guazi's nagging and Zhu Jie's idiocy, because both of them were people with principles. Duluan, on the other hand, was the exact opposite. He was too unprincipled. Zhu Jie was his employer, and Duluan had actually tricked Zhu Jie for money. Yang Yi could predict that if he handed Duluan over to Zhu Jie might not be able to handle it properly, and Duluan might even bite him. If Zhu Jie was unlucky, Yang Yi wouldn't care too much. After all, it was Zhu Jie's own business. But the problem was that Yang Yi had a deal with Zhu Jie. If Duluan leaked the news to the media, or sold the news to the media for money, Yang Yi and Murphy would be affected the most. So Yang Yi still had the recording and hadn't handed it over. As for what would happen to Duluan, he was still hesitating. If it were in his previous life, Yang Yi would definitely kill Duluan without hesitation. But now, was it necessary to take such a risk? Of course, if he really killed Duluan, Yang Yi could still ensure that he wouldn't leave any traces behind. Plus, he had nothing to do with Duluan, so no one would suspect him. But Yang Yi was afraid that if he killed Duluan, he wouldn't be able to return to his simple and happy life. There was an insurmountable hurdle in his heart. Hee papa, so cool. The little girl's innocent laughter pulled Yang Yi back to reality. It turned out that just now, when Yang Yi kept changing lanes to overtake other cars, she saw it all. She especially liked the feeling of a car swimming in the traffic like a fish, so she was leaning on the window and watching. Do you like Papa racing? Yang Yi looked at his daughter, who was sitting in the child safety seat, from the rearview mirror and asked with a smile. I like it when Papa drives fast. Fast and we can pass that small car, Bayou Pass. She turned her head back to look at her father, and said seriously. Yang Yi laughed out loud. Why is it Bayou? Isn't it just a whoosh? She was amused by her father's voice and giggled. I don't know. Hee. When they arrived at the kindergarten, the environment was a little simpler. Although several teachers also looked at Yang Yi with sparkling eyes, it didn't affect the children's school. After they welcomed Shi, they were a little embarrassed and asked in a low voice. Father Yangshi, are you really Murphy's husband? Yang Yi nodded helplessly and said, the media outside is harassing us badly now. Please help me keep it a secret and protect my daughter. Don't worry about this, we will definitely not tell anyone. Moreover, strangers can't come into our kindergarten. Teacher Shun and Teacher Kai said excitedly. After all, it was an aristocratic kindergarten. Whether it was the teachers or the management facilities, it was better than ordinary kindergartens. Even a rich man like Lans Hao Kai, who usually had bodyguards around, arranged for his daughter to go to school here, which meant that the safety of this kindergarten could still make Yang Yi feel relieved. Yang Yi nodded to the other party and drove away. On the way, Yang Yi received a call from Murphy. What's wrong? Aren't you coming back tomorrow? Yang Yi asked curiously. However, on the other end of the phone, Mo Xiaowan rushed to speak. Let me say it, let me say it. Murphy could only put the phone on speaker. Cough cough, brother-in-law. I have 2 pieces of good news and 2 pieces of bad news to tell you. Which one do you want to hear first? Mo Xiaowan said seriously. Yang Yi was speechless and said, what's going on? Which one do you want to hear first? How good could the good news be? How bad could the bad news be? Yang Yi felt that he could handle things calmly. The bad news that Mo Xiaowan could tell him could not scare him at all. Then let's hear the bad news first. Yang Yi said helplessly as he drove. You can't use your phone while driving. Cough cough, don't learn from him. The first piece of bad news is that the news of you and my sister's marriage has spread to America. My uncle and auntie, that means your father-in-law and mother-in-law know about it. Yang Yi's heart skipped a beat. Luckily, he was mentally strong and did not step on the brakes and cause the car behind to crash into him. However, such bad news still made Yang Yi nervous. The disdain from before had long been thrown to the back of his mind. Really? Yang Yi took a deep breath and asked. He stopped the car by the roadside, afraid that there would be more excitement. Really, why would I lie to you? Besides, your relationship has been exposed for so many days. Isn't it normal for my uncle and auntie to know about it? Mo Xiaowan said. Then what's the good news? Yang Yi frowned. The first piece of good news is that thanks to my good words, My auntie has a good impression of you. So when my uncle was about to bring the shotgun back to China to kill you, he was stopped by my auntie. Oh right, that's the second piece of good news. Mo Shawan said mysteriously. Stopped. That's good. Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. When he thought about facing his father-in-law, he felt a headache coming on. What's the other piece of bad news? Yang Yi asked impatiently. There's another piece of bad news. My auntie only stopped the shotgun, but she couldn't stop my uncle. He still got on the plane back to China. Mo Shawan smiled awkwardly and said, F***ck. Yang Yi felt a headache coming on again. She couldn't stop him? If she couldn't stop him, what good news was that? At this moment Murphy grabbed the phone. Her voice was filled with self-blame. Yang Yi, I'm sorry. A few days ago, I forgot about my papa and mom. I didn't expect them to know about it so soon. Yang Yi shook his head with a wry smile. He comforted Murphy and said, It's okay. We have to face it in the end. But don't worry. You told me last time that your dad's blood pressure was a bit high. I won't provoke him. If he wants to hit or scold you, it's up to him. I promise I can coax your dad down. It's my fault. I didn't think of a solution, which made my papa so angry. Murphy quickly said, After I finish my activities today, I'll come back tonight. Let's face my papa together, okay? And I'll listen to you. Yang Yi said sweet nothings to Murphy for a while before hanging up the phone. Father-in-law was about to kill him. Yang Yi was at a loss. He had no experience in dealing with his father-in-law. But Yang Yi forced himself to calm down. Trouble really came one after another. No, he had to solve Du Luan's problem first. Otherwise, when he had to face Murphy's father in 2 days, he wouldn't have time to deal with this bastard. Yang Yi's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He finally made up his mind. Chapter 445. In the middle class of Springfield Kindergarten, Shishi enjoyed the treatment of a celebrity. Her friends gathered around her, and even Yang Luoqi looked at Shishi with envy. Behind her were Wang Xiyun, who had 2 braids, and Little Belle, who was watching the fun. Shishi, your mother is actually a singing star. Chen Shiryan shouted. Lan Xian said proudly. I already knew this. We had dinner together. Shishi's mother is super nice. That Shishi is not loyal. She didn't tell me. Chen Shiryan said unhappily. Chen Shiryan didn't know where she learned the word loyal from, but she began to abuse it. Shishi was bombarded by her friends' words. Finally, she found a chance to speak. She said anxiously, Chen Shiryan, don't be angry, okay? I didn't mean to not tell you. My papa and mom said that I can't tell you. I'm not angry. Chen Shiryan was also careless. She forgot why she was unhappy just now and said carelessly, Shishi, will we still be good friends in the future? Nan Zhaoyu asked in a low voice, worried. This little boy has become much shyer and more introverted than before. He is also more sensitive. However, he has become more sensible. Because his father is still in the recovery period, he needs his mother to take care of him. As a result, his mother will take less care of him. Nan Zhaoyu needs to know how to take care of himself and care for his father. Of course we're good friends. Shishi nodded hard and smiled sweetly. In the evening, Cici finished school. After playing with her friends for the whole day, the little girl ran out of the classroom happily. When she saw her father in the crowd, she called out happily. She waved one hand and raised the other, so that she could support the shoulder strap of her small school bag that had slipped down. Then, she ran over to him with clattering steps. She didn't even bother to carry her backpack properly, and couldn't wait to throw herself into her father's arms. Yang Yi was talking to a few parents. They were Murphy's fans. Of course, they restrained their emotions in front of their children. They just asked Yang Yi if they could buy some Murphy's signed albums. How about this? I'll bring it to you tomorrow at the same time. Yang Yi smiled and nodded at the other party. Alright, thank you so much, Muziang. Sigh, this child is so cute. A few of the fans' parents left in satisfaction. Before they left, they did not forget to praise Shishi. At this time, Yang Yi finally had the time to tidy up his daughter's hair. He said softly, Why are you so happy today? Did something fun happen in the kindergarten again? Shishi shook her head hard. She hugged her father's neck tightly and rubbed her little head on her father's shoulder. She said sweetly, "No, Papa, I missed you." At this time, Chen Shiyin and Nan Jiaoyu, who were passing by, greeted Yang Yi. Yang Yi also hurriedly responded, "Papa, did you miss me?" She reached out to turn her father's face and said with a pout. This stickiness really made people like her. Yang Yi's mood, which had been gloomy all day, seemed to have been blown away by the little girl's fairy breath. He showed a sunny smile on his face and said, "Of course, Papa also missed Shishi very much." The little girl now giggled contentedly. However, after leaving the kindergarten on the road, Shishi suddenly wrinkled her little nose and sniffed her father like a dog. Yang Yi's heart skipped a beat. He pretended to be calm and asked, "What's wrong? Is Papa's body smelly?" It didn't make sense. After dealing with the aftermath, Yang Yi specially disguised himself. He used a fake ID card in an express hotel and thoroughly took several baths in order to wash away the pungent smell and bad luck on his body. Shishi's eyes were a little confused. She looked at her father and shook her head, but then nodded. "What do you mean?" Yang Yi opened the car door and put Shishi in the back seat and fastened the seatbelt. "I don't know. Papa smells, but it's not smelly." "I don't know," Shishi said in confusion. "That means it's not smelly." Yang Yi smiled and rubbed Shishi's head and said gently, he had already thoroughly cleaned it. With his sense of smell, he couldn't smell the stench at all. He didn't know where Shishi smelled the stench. Could it be that her intuition was so flexible that she smelled it across time and space? After Yang Yi started the car, after a while Shishi pouted and said, "Papa, did you drink?" "No. After Papa promised you, I almost didn't drink," Yang Yi said with a smile. "Well, Papa is also a good child." Shishi finally threw away her confusion. She didn't think about it since she couldn't figure it out. She revealed a lovely angel-like smile in the back. In fact, Yang Yi's heart was in great turmoil. He wasn't as calm as he appeared to be. Shishi's pure eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, giving him a strong pressure. Her innocent smile was like a mirror, reflecting Yang Yi's sins. In the future, he still had to be a good person. Yang Yi didn't want to be tortured by his daughter. "Ahem, Shishi, your grandpa is coming." Yang Yi changed the topic and said with a smile. "Grandpa?" Shishi cried out in surprise. "Grandpa is coming. In the future, try to speak Chinese in China. Call him Grandpa." Yang Yi corrected Shishi and then said, "Your grandpa is not coming. He is coming. He should still be on the plane now, but I don't know if he will arrive tomorrow or the day after tomorrow." "Grandpa." Shishi thought of her father's words and quickly changed her words. She said happily, "Grandpa is coming to see Shishi. Last time I called Grandpa, he said that Shishi missed him very much." Yang Yi smiled bitterly in his heart. If only it were that simple. "Shishi, Papa wants to ask you, do you know what your grandpa likes?" Yang Yi asked while driving. Shishi tilted her head and thought for a moment, then said, "I know Grandpa likes to drink, but Mom and Grandma don't let Grandpa drink. He is disobedient when he drinks." Yang Yi frowned and thought to himself, "Should I buy a bottle of good wine for my father-in-law?" It was another matter whether he would give him a drink or not, but he had to express his feelings. "Shishi, does your grandpa like red wine or white wine? Or?" Yang Yi asked carefully. Shishi was confused. She had never heard of this before. "It's wine. Grandpa likes to drink," the little girl said seriously, as if she was worried that her father would misunderstand. Well, it was a waste of time. "Does Grandpa have any other hobbies?" Yang Yi asked. "Grandpa likes guns. Guns that are very, very big. Guns that are very loud and scary." Cece once again gave an unreliable answer. "Anything else?" "Well, what does Grandpa like?" Shishi was also confused. She was only 3 years old when she came back to China. How could she remember so many things? "Well, it doesn't matter." Before Yang Yi's voice died away, the little girl in the back shouted happily, "I know, Papa, I know." Shishi cried. Yang Yi looked at his daughter, who was smiling happily in the rearview mirror. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What else?" Shishi giggled and said, "Me too. Grandpa likes Shishi the most." Yang Yi couldn't help laughing. Although he knew that it was unreliable to ask his daughter, he still asked, and it was as if he didn't ask. Chapter 446. In the evening, Shishi sat upright and motionless, watching TV with great interest. Yang Yi sat beside his daughter, fiddling with a small and exquisite component with his fingers, and his eyes revealed a thoughtful look. After a while, Yang Yi put the small component in his pocket and gently said to Shishi, "Shishi, Papa has something to do, so I have to go out for a while. I'll be back soon." Shishi reluctantly turned her gaze away from the TV. She nervously held her father's hand and said with grievance, "Papa, where are you going? I don't want to be alone at home. I'm just going out for a while. I'll be back soon." Yang Yi looked at his daughter's worried little face and said with a smile, "Don't be afraid. Papa is going out for a while. I'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes." In such a short time, no one would come and take Shishi away, right? Shishi nodded. She hugged the small pillow and sat on the sofa, her eyes following her father's figure as he walked to the stairs. Finally, the little girl saw that her father's figure was about to disappear, so she quickly raised her voice and shouted, "Papa, you have to come back soon." "I'll be back soon." Her father's voice came together with the sound of the door closing. "Papa will be back soon." Shishi was not in the mood to watch TV. She stared at the stairs and muttered, as if to embolden herself. Yang Yi, who went out, walked to the embankment of the Grand Canal, climbed over it, and came to the riverside. He took out the component just now and crushed it easily with his fingers. Then, he looked at the fragments in his hand indifferently. His palm tilted, and the fragments fell into the Grand Canal, and flowed into the distance with the surging river. Yang Yi clapped his hands and did not look at it again. He turned around and left. Shishi was still waiting for him at home. Murphy returned to Jiangqing at 10 o'clock in the evening. After all, Shanghai was very close to Jiangqing. Although Shishi had already fallen asleep, the couple was not sleepy at all. They nervously discussed how to deal with Elder Mo, who was about to come knocking on their door. "Why don't we give Shishi another 2 days off? I think it's just like when we went back to Wadayaka village. With Shishi's help, it might be better." Murphy and Yang Yi sat cross-legged on the bed, facing each other. Yang Yi shook his head and said with a wry smile, "I don't think it's possible. A daughter-in-law and a son-in-law are treated differently. If it were me, Shishi would have been abandoned for 4 years. No matter who pleaded for her, it would be useless. I would beat him up first." After putting himself in her shoes, Yang Yi knew that he was doomed. He could only try his best to please her and beg for forgiveness. But could it be that I can only let you get beaten up? Can't we not be beaten?" Murphy asked sadly. "It's okay. I'm thick-skinned. If Dad beats me, it won't hurt. He's almost 60 years old." Yang Yi smiled and said, "And it's not bad. Let him vent his anger. After he's gone, it'll be easier for us to please him and get his approval. Don't be like my dad. His head is filled with thoughts of solving problems by force." Murphy said worriedly, "Let's quickly think of a way to satisfy him before he beats you up, right?" "Yes, what is your dad like? Let's buy more such as alcohol and cigarettes." "I heard that your dad likes to drink," Yang Yi said. "My dad used to smoke and drink all the time. Later, he was diagnosed with high blood pressure, so he stopped drinking. However, he couldn't quit smoking. But now he's smoking a pipe." Murphy quickly said to Yang Yi, "You can't buy him alcohol. It wasn't easy to get him to drink less. Don't buy him cigarettes either. Smoking less is good for his health." Smoking and drinking, no wonder his temper was so bad. Yang Yi's dad only had a strange temper and was stubborn. However, his reasoning was still very clear. He wouldn't make things too difficult for others. After all, he was a martial artist. He didn't smoke and rarely drank alcohol. Yang Yi pondered and said, "I don't want to buy alcohol or cigarettes. I don't know which tobacco is better. How about this? I'll get your dad a good tobacco pipe. My coffee supplier often travels abroad. Moreover, he likes to collect good things. He probably has a tobacco pipe that he can sell to me." Murphy could accept this. She gently nodded and said, "By the way, husband, my dad is actually a scholar. Moreover, he used to be an architectural designer. Do you have any knowledge in this area? If you do, you can talk to him more. However, Yang Yi was dumbfounded. Architectural design knowledge? How could he understand? He knew how to act like an architectural designer, from the way he dressed. But if he opened his mouth, he would be exposed. It was really a case of regretting not having enough knowledge. Yang Yi usually read a lot of books. However, why didn't he read 1 or 2 architectural design books? Murphy could see that Yang Yi was in a difficult position. She quickly said, "It's okay if you don't know about architectural design. My dad is now running a farm. You did farm work when you were young. You should have a lot to talk about." Just as Yang Yi and Murphy were discussing countermeasures, Elder Mo's plane had already landed in Taiwan. After returning, this was a big province. Of course, its excellent geographical location made it a transit point for many international flights. Mo Henian also had to change planes here before flying directly to Jiangcheng. However, the flight to Jiangcheng would have to wait until noon the next day. Mo Henian pulled his luggage and checked in at a hotel near Taiwan's international airport. Although the old man was almost 60 years old, he was still dressed very fashionably. He wore a white and black shirt, a big logo belt, jeans, riding boots, sunglasses, and a wide-brimmed hat. He gave off the vibe of a playboy cowboy. After sleeping in the hotel for a night to adjust to the time difference, Mo Henian took a taxi alone to the streets of Baobei to eat a specialty omelette breakfast. This was his hometown. Elder Mo was naturally familiar with the local customs. He even found an old shop that had been open for decades. However, Mo Henian had no intention of returning to his hometown to visit his relatives when he passed by Treasure Island this time. His mind was still filled with that bastard Yang Yi. "Boss, take these newspapers for me." Mo Henian slowly drank his soy milk as he called the boss of the shop to bring over the tabloids that they had subscribed to for their customers. When the boss took them over, he looked at Mo Henian strangely. He seemed to think that it was strange that an old man like Mo Henian would care about gossip. Mo Henian ignored him. He flipped through the news and looked for news about Murphy and Yang Yi. This one was actually praising him? What nonsense was that? This one was also giving him blessings. My wife was right. These tabloids are all crazy. And this one? What kind of person is Yang Yi? An angel and a devil coexist. Mo Henian finally saw a somewhat objective report. He read it with interest. In the past few days, there had been many reports about what kind of person Yang Yi was. However, most of them guessed the relationship between Yang Yi and Murphy from the songs he had written. Of course, this was a very outrageous guess that was far from the truth. This report also wanted to play with gimmicks. He thought that he could have a unique point of view, but in reality, he was pursuing the most eye-catching extreme. In this report, it used Yang Yi's latest best-selling novel, Journey by White Knight, as a case study. It listed all the darkness described in Journey by White Knight together, such as pedophilia, QJ, deception, murder, and so on. It blackened the contents of the book to the point that it was nothing good. A man who can write such a horrifying novel can almost imagine that his own mind is not healthy. Otherwise, how can he describe such a dark story so gripping through his imagination? On one hand, he can write positive and optimistic fairy tales and inspirational military camp stories. On the other hand, he can write psychopathic novels like Prison Break and Journey by White Knight. Yang Yi is both an angel and a devil. Perhaps both extremes exist in him. This kind of speculation would be laughed to death in the literary world. If an author who wrote about crime committed a crime, wouldn't the police be able to catch him easily? However, in the eyes of many bored people who like to read gossip, the credibility was still very high. Mo Henian was not that bored, nor was he that ignorant. However, he read this report with prejudice. As he read, he frowned. This man is not simple. Mo Henian felt that Yang Yi was a mystery. The more complicated the man was, the more Mo Henian felt that his daughter had jumped into a fire pit. Murphy's mind was simple. She had lived in a simple environment with few people since she was young. She was easily deceived. Chapter 447. The next day, Yang Yi and Murphy were busy decorating the house. Although they could not paint it in a pastoral style, they had to try their best to cater to the habits of the upcoming Yang Yi. From time to time, Yang Yi would drive his tyrannical wolf to go shopping, which confused the paparazzi who were lying in ambush around Jiangchuan. Yang Yi was not in the mood to deal with these paparazzi. It seemed that the two sides were living in harmony. Du Yuanlei, who had been studying the script in seclusion for almost a month, came to the coffee shop. However, she knew from Yang Huan that Yang Yi was in trouble, so she chose not to disturb Yang Yi. She planned to find some actors and actresses by herself. When Yang Yi finished dealing with his personal affairs, she would discuss with Yang Yi and let him make the decision. As for Mo Xiaowan, she had planned to sign the contract with Guizi after the concert, but now it had to be postponed. For the time being, Mo Xiaowan was in a terrible state. She had to help Murphy deal with the endless pursuit of the media, and also deal with the inquiries from Zhou Mingyu. It seemed that the world had stopped running because of the arrival of Yang Yi. Now, Yang Yi could devote himself to preparing for the arrival of his murderous father-in-law. The tense day finally passed and night fell. Cici, who had gone to kindergarten, also came back. The little girl chattered with her parents about the interesting things that happened in the kindergarten. Her childish voice diluted some of the tension in the house. However, after Cici finished talking about her own matters, she remembered her grandfather who liked her the most and ran to the kitchen like the wind. "Papa, I forgot." Cici opened the door and stuck her head in. She was beaming with joy. "When will Grandpa come?" "Cici, you have to get used to speaking Chinese. I don't know when your grandpa will come, but he should be here soon. You can ask your mother." Yang Yi was busy cooking, and his back was a little stiff. "Okay then." Cici was a little disappointed. She ran back to the living room and threw herself into her mom's arms. "Mom, Grandpa." "Well, when will Grandpa come?" "Mom doesn't know. I can't get through. Grandpa may still be on the plane," Murphy said helplessly. However, when they were eating, Murphy's phone rang. Suddenly Yang Yi and Murphy froze. They looked at each other and saw the nervousness in each other's eyes. Was it the old man calling? She was the only one who was not affected by the phone. She took her father's hand and pouted. "Papa, I want to eat this prawn." When Yang Yi was putting food into Shishi's bowl, his attention was on Murphy. Fortunately, he was skillful and did not put the prawn on Shishi's clothes. Murphy got up to get her phone. When she saw the caller ID, she smiled and said to Yang Yi, "It's Xiaowan." "That's good." Yang Yi was relieved. Although he was just lying to himself, this death sentence should be delayed for as long as possible. However, Mo Fei, who was answering the phone, smiled bitterly. She said to Mo Xiaowan on the other end of the phone, "Okay, I know. Drive carefully. When you pick him up, give me a call." Yang Yi's heart was in his throat again. What's going on? After Murphy put down the phone, she smiled at Yang Yi helplessly. Her next words confirmed Yang Yi's guess. "My father got off the plane. He asked Xiaowan to pick him up." Mo Hinian had never been here before. How could he know where Yang Yi and Murphy lived? "Grandpa is here?" Shishi reacted quickly. She put down the spoon and asked happily. "Yes, he's here, but he hasn't arrived yet. He just arrived at the airport," Murphy said to Shishi. Yang Yi got up hurriedly and said, "How about we go to the airport to pick him up now? My car is fast. Tell Xiaowan not to go." It was the first time his father-in-law came. How could he not welcome him? However, Murphy shook her head and said, "He didn't call me. He doesn't want me to pick him up. It's useless for you to go now. Just wait at home." Murphy knew her father's temper very well. She felt her father's nervousness and worry. She pulled her father's hand and said innocently, "Papa, don't be afraid. Grandpa is fierce, but I'll tell Grandpa not to be fierce to my papa." Yang Yi felt warm in his heart. He kissed his daughter's forehead and said, "Thank you, Shishi. You're so nice." However, no matter how nice his daughter was, she only gave him moral support. Yang Yi still had to be prepared. He had to be nervous. Yang Yi ate 2 mouthfuls of rice and couldn't sit still. He wiped his hands and said to Murphy, "I'll cook a few more dishes that your father likes to eat. I'll cook some rice for him and Mo Xiaowan. They probably haven't had dinner yet." It was his father-in-law's first time here. He couldn't let him eat leftovers, right? Moreover, Yang Yi had to use 2000% of his effort to cook a sumptuous and delicious meal. Luckily, he had prepared a lot of ingredients in the fridge. Moreover, he had consulted Murphy to buy many of them. Okay. Murphy nodded gently. She couldn't eat anymore. She took care of Shishi and helped Yang Yi wash the dishes. Then she came out to look around. She was worried that something was wrong or that some flower arrangement had lost its leaves. She looked restless. It was late at night. On the school road of Jiangqing Media University, the bustle had died down. Only a few students who came back from the self-study room of the teaching building walked past under the shadows of the trees on both sides of the road. Blocked by the leaves, the street lights looked dim. When the night wind blew, the shadows of the street lights swayed, adding to the gloomy atmosphere. At this moment, a silver-gray car pierced through the night sky and drove slowly on the school road. In the car, Mo Shaowan whispered to her uncle as she drove. This is Jiangqing Media University. Brother-in-law. Ahem, sis and the others live at the back door. It's above a coffee shop. The coffee shop is also owned by him. Mo Shaowan had been scolded by Mo Henian a few times along the way. She was already very careful with her words. Mo Henian snorted. He looked outside, but no one could tell what kind of expression he had. The car drove out of the back door. At the intersection, Mo Shaowan saw Yang Yi and Murphy waiting there with a camping light. She also saw Shishi, who was in Yang Yi's arms. We're here, uncle. Look, sis is waiting for you. Mo Shaowan exclaimed in surprise. She tried to liven up the atmosphere. However, Mo Henian didn't respond. He wasn't surprised at all. The lights in the car weren't bright. This made his expression look even worse. It was so dark that it seemed like ink was going to flow out. Brother-in-law, I've already tried my best. You're on your own now. Mo Shaowan sighed inwardly. Outside, Mo Fei saw Mo Xiaozhuan's car. She quickly pulled the little hand of Cici, who was looking at the camping lights curiously, and said, Cici, look, Grandpa is here. Where? Shishi looked up. Her face was full of surprise. In this car. Mo Shaowan didn't stop her car. She drove directly to the front of the coffee shop. Yang Yi carried Shishi and walked with Murphy to the entrance of the coffee shop. They waited anxiously. Before Yang Yi could step forward, the door to the front passenger seat opened. Then in Yang Yi's eyes, an old man with a stern face and high spirits walked down the stairs. Chapter 448. Mo Henian was also very tall. Although he was old now and had shrunk a little, he was still more than 1.8 meters tall. The wrinkles on his face were not deep, his eyes were bright, and he was full of energy. Coupled with his fashionable cowboy outfit, it was hard to believe that he was nearly 60 years old. Grandpa! Shishi was very happy to see her grandfather and shouted with joy. Mo Henian glanced at Yang Yi and just nodded at Shishi coolly without saying a word. Papa! Murphy returned to her Taiwanese accent and called out obediently, wanting to go over to support him. However, Mo Henian waved his hand and snorted coldly. Okay, don't pretend to be attentive. I'm not so old that I can't walk. Murphy could only stand aside awkwardly. Yang Yi quickly stepped forward and greeted. Dad! Murphy introduced to Mo Henian. Papa, this is Yang Yi, Shishi's papa. We are now, wait. Mo Henian raised his hand and reprimanded Yang Yi. Who is your father? Do you have any shame? This was awkward. Yang Yi was dumbfounded and did not know how to answer. Murphy, however, felt injustice for Yang Yi. She had never suffered such grievances in Yang Yi's hometown. She raised her voice and said unhappily, Dad, I married Yang Yi. What's wrong with him calling you Dad? You married him. That was your choice. I didn't acknowledge him as my son-in-law. Mo Henian snorted. In the end, Mo Henian's way of thinking was different. He also supported free marriage. Of course, Mo Henian still had a lot of resentment for his daughter marrying someone else without any notice. This was reflected in his tone. At this time, Mo Shaowan also locked the car and got out. She looked at the scene and quickly said, Uncle, let's go up and talk. It's windy outside. She also signaled to Yang Yi and said, Brother-in-law, What are you waiting for? Come and help me carry Uncle's luggage up. Yes, let's go up first. Have you guys eaten? I've prepared dinner upstairs. Shawan, come up and eat a little. Yang Yi quickly put Cece down and said as he walked to the trunk. No need, I can take it myself. Emohenian said stiffly. However, at this moment, Shishi stopped him. The little girl pouted and said with grievance, Grandpa, don't you like Shishi anymore? You don't even hug Shishi. Emohenian's heart softened when he saw his granddaughter's sad expression. He bent down and picked up Shishi saying, How could this be? Grandpa only cares about talking. From the trunk, Yang Yi picked up Emohenian's suitcase. It wasn't heavy, and there were probably more clothes inside. Anything else? Yang Yi asked. That's all. Emo Xiaozhuan's gaze was somewhat evasive. Wait. There's more. Emohenian walked over with Shishi in his arms and said in a deep voice. Under Emo Xiaozhuan's helpless gaze, Emohenian reached into the trunk and rummaged around. He actually took out a rolling pin that was as thick as 2 fingers. It wasn't too long, but it wasn't too short either. It was about the size of a steel pipe weapon in a movie. Moreover, this rolling pin was made of pear wood. It was heavy and very sturdy. In terms of hardness, it wasn't necessarily inferior to a steel pipe. This, Emo Shawan looked at Yang Yi helplessly. The rolling pin was still wrapped in plastic and had a store's advertisement. It was obvious that he had just bought it. Moreover, on the way here, Emohenian had asked Emo Shawan to stop by the roadside supermarket and went in to buy it. Emo Shawan wanted to help Yang Yi by pretending that she forgot to take it. In the end, Yang Yi dug his own grave and asked an extra question. Yang Yi was silent. He didn't say anything. He just carried the suitcase and led the way in front. Emohenian held the rolling pin upside down and walked at the back with Shishi in his arms. Murphy was worried and wanted to snatch the rolling pin. However, Emohenian stepped aside and even glared at her sternly. Grandpa, what's this? Shishi finally remembered to correct him. She curiously looked at the rolling pin in her grandpa's hand and asked, This is a rolling pin. Emohenian's voice was slightly gentler when facing his granddaughter. What's a rolling pin? Of course, Shishi didn't understand. Hee, it's used to beat up bad guys. Emohenian said meaningfully. Dad. Murphy shouted angrily. Yang Yi isn't a bad guy. However, Emohenian didn't reply. Only Shishi nodded. My papa isn't a bad guy. When they went upstairs, Yang Yi brought out the dishes and asked Emohenian and Emo Shawan to eat. In order not to irritate Emohenian, Yang Yi also called him uncle. I'll eat, Emohenian said indifferently. Papa, don't force yourself. You've been on the plane for so long. Eat something. Yang Yi specially made it for you. I'll get you some rice. Murphy still cared about her father and persuaded. Yes, uncle, you should eat a little bit. Fill your stomach and try my cooking. Yang Yi also persuaded. Yours? If I can't eat it. Emohenian still had a deep prejudice against Yang Yi. His words didn't give Yang Yi any face at all. Yang Yi certainly didn't care. He still tried his best to fight for it. However, he didn't know how to respond. I'll eat it. I'm starving. When Emo Shawan saw this, she hurriedly tried to smooth things over. She scooped a bowl of rice for herself and started eating. She looked like she was eating very happily. She was very sensible. She ran over at this time, took her grandfather's hand and said, Grandpa, my papa's dishes are really delicious. I'm not lying to you. Emohenian shook his head. The old man had his own stubbornness. Now that Shishi was here, he couldn't flare up. He continued to suppress the anger in his heart. He had suppressed it for more than 5 years. Would he still care about a few minutes? Of course he cared. Emohenian didn't put down the rolling pin in his hand. Papa, can I have a few words with you alone? Although Emofe said it in an inquiring tone, she still pulled Emohenian to the study without any explanation. Emohenian didn't break away. He walked into the study with a frown. Before Murphy could speak, he raised his hand and snorted. It's useless no matter what you say. Don't plead for him. No matter what you say, he's still a scum in my eyes. I can tell you clearly, Feifei, your father, I don't approve of your marriage. Yes, now that your wings have hardened, I can't control you. If you want to get married and have children, I can't stop you. However, I will never accept this person as my son-in-law. As if venting, the more Emohenian spoke, the angrier he became. Murphy wasn't provoked by her father's harsh words. Instead, she calmly waited for Emohenian to finish speaking. Then she slowly said, Dad, I know why you've always harbored such a deep prejudice against Yang Yi. Prejudice? Emohenian was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. Dad, can you listen to my explanation? Murphy said softly. Say it. Emohenian waved his hand and said irritably. My relationship with Yang Yi isn't what you think it is. Murphy said. When I was pregnant and returned to America, he didn't know about it at all. Emohenian snorted. Don't use this to deceive me. He was with you. Even if he didn't know you were pregnant, wouldn't he come looking for you when you suddenly disappeared? It's not what you think. We weren't together. My pregnancy was just an accident. Murphy explained. As she talked about this experience, she felt that the fear she didn't want to face was peeled away again. She couldn't help but cry. Accident? You and him? If a man who does this kind of thing isn't a scum, then what is? Emohenian became even angrier. He angrily slammed the rolling pin on the table, making a loud noise. Papa, it's really not what you think it is. I. Murphy wiped her tears and told her father what happened that night. Although almost all the details were omitted, Emohenian still knew the fact that Yang Yi saved his daughter. Why didn't you tell us such a big thing happened? Emohenian asked angrily. Murphy could only sob. She didn't know how to answer. She originally wanted to hide such a thing in her heart for a lifetime. How could she have the nerve to mention it to her family? I think this guy saved you with bad intentions. He wanted you to jump from one fire pit to another. Emohenian still had a deep prejudice against Yang Yi. No, I was willing to do this. Papa, don't blame him. Murphy held Emohenian's hand with a sobbing tone and pleaded. Then let me ask you. Since such a thing happened, why didn't he contact you afterward? You were like strangers without any contact. Even when you were pregnant, you didn't know how to find him and tell him. Emohenian grasped the key point. He slammed the table and asked angrily. This. Murphy was stunned. She really didn't think about this question. Naturally, she didn't prepare an answer for Yang Yi. But it also seemed to be an unsolvable question. She had no way to explain it to Yang Yi. Isn't he also a person who abandoned his wife? Am I wrong to say that he's a scumbag? Emohenian said with a gloomy face. No, Papa, Yang Yi didn't do anything wrong. He really didn't know. If you want to blame me, just hit me, okay? Murphy choked sadly. It's all my fault that I didn't tell you clearly before, causing you to misunderstand him. At this moment, Murphy fell into deep helplessness. She thought that if she took all the responsibility, her father wouldn't be angry with Yang Yi again. But she still underestimated Emohenian's accumulated resentment against Yang Yi. However, at this time, the door of the study was suddenly knocked. Chapter 449. Although the door to the study was closed, Yang Yi's ears were still very sensitive. If he really wanted to listen, he could still hear the conversation inside. He could hear Emohenian's angry scolding and Murphy's sobbing. He actually didn't care how Emohenian scolded, but Murphy's crying made his heart ache. So he stood up and gently knocked on the door of the study. Murphy opened the door. Although she had already wiped away the tears on her face, afraid that Yang Yi would be worried, Yang Yi still found traces of tears in her eyes. Silly girl, how can you shoulder all the problems on your own? Yang Yi held her face in his hands and whispered lovingly to her. Of course not. Being pampered by Yang Yi like this, Murphy's heart suddenly felt a lot better. She couldn't help but smile. Cough cough. A cough that sounded like late-stage tuberculosis woke the two people up. Yang Yi felt a murderous gaze beside him. He quickly put down his hand that was caressing Murphy's face. This Murphy, come out first. I also have something to say to Uncle. Yang Yi said. But. Murphy became nervous. It's okay, trust me. Yang Yi said gently. Yang Yi's determined eyes gave Murphy some confidence. She pursed her lips and nodded lightly. Murphy went out. Yang Yi came in, and the study door closed again. Murphy returned to the dining table. She looked back 3 times with unease, looking at the commotion in the study. However, she saw it. She obediently leaned over and said, "Mom, why are you crying?" "It's okay." Murphy rubbed her daughter's head. She didn't have the energy to think of a lie to coax her, so she could only smile gently. "Did Grandpa yell at Mom?" She pouted and said, "I don't like Grandpa anymore." Murphy quickly waved her hand and said, "It's not like that. You can't say that. After all, he is your grandfather. Mama is crying because the wind is too strong." Sand got into her eyes, so she cried a little. She tried her best to smile and said, "Look, Mom isn't unhappy." "Mom, then let me help you blow it, okay?" She said softly as she shook her mother's hand. "Okay." Mo Fei had no choice but to play along and lower his head. She pouted her little mouth and moved closer to her mother's open eyes. She blew a mouthful of fragrant fairy air. She didn't even know that to really blow on one's eyes, one had to open the eyelids to blow. "Mom is done." "Thank you, Shishi. You can go play." Shishi was finally satisfied. She skipped into the living room and played with her little friends. "Did eldest uncle scold you inside?" Mo Shawan asked softly as she drank the soup. "He didn't scold me. He mainly scolded Yang Yi." Murphy shook her head bitterly and said, "It's useless no matter what I say. He has too much prejudice against Yang Yi. That can't be helped. He has been suppressing his anger for 4 or 5 years. He definitely has to vent it." Mo Shawan spread her hands. "But I'm worried that even if he vents his anger, he won't be able to forgive Yang Yi." Murphy looked worriedly at the study. In the study, after Murphy left, Mo Henian frowned and sized up Yang Yi's appearance. This was the first time he saw Yang Yi's appearance under this bright light. To tell the truth, Yang Yi wasn't handsome, but he wasn't slick either. His appearance was upright, his hair was tidied up, and his eyes were spirited and focused. He didn't look like a thief whose eyes wandered everywhere. However, even if Yang Yi looked like Takeshi Kaneshiro, Mo Henian still didn't like him because he was his son-in-law. "I have nothing to talk about with you." Mo Henian snorted and said, "Uncle, I'm here to admit my mistake." Yang Yi said submissively, "Admit your mistake? What mistake did you make?" Mo Henian said sarcastically, "Previously, I let Murphy give birth and raise the child alone. She suffered so much. This was the first mistake. I shouldn't have ignored it." Yang Yi said. Mo Henian didn't reply. He frowned and looked at Yang Yi. Yang Yi said sincerely, "After that, I got together with Murphy. I know you were angry with me, but I didn't take the initiative to come to America to apologize to you and ask for your forgiveness. This was the second mistake." Mo Henian laughed and said sarcastically, "You still know your mistake? You still know how to apologize? What's done can't be undone. You've already given birth to the child, and now you're asking for my forgiveness?" Heh, this resentment was about to shoot up to the sky. Yang Yi continued, "The third mistake is that I forgot to tell you that Murphy and I are now married. It's all my fault. I didn't do what I should have done properly." "Uncle." Yang Yi raised his head and said sincerely, "I apologize for the mistakes I've made in the past. I hope you can forgive me. In the future, I will treat Murphy wholeheartedly and take care of her for the rest of my life. I won't let you down again." Although Yang Yi summed it up well, Mo Henian couldn't help it. He said coldly, "Do I have to forgive you just because you know your mistake? Do you think you can get away with just a simple apology? Let me tell you, Yang Yi, I don't believe your nonsense at all." Yang Yi was silent for a while. He walked over and picked up the rolling pin from the table. He handed it to Mo Henian. Then, under Mo Henian's shocked gaze, he took off his shirt and put it aside, revealing his broad back. Then, with his back facing Mo Henian, he knelt on one knee. Kneeling was actually a very shameful thing. Of course, in his previous life, Yang Yi was used to enduring humiliation, and didn't find it difficult to kneel. However, in his memory in this life, he shouldn't cry easily. A man should have gold under his knees. However, kneeling to the heavens, the earth, and your parents. Now this old man behind him was his wife's father. No matter what, he could still be considered his father. Kneeling down wasn't considered a coward, right? Emohenian looked at the rolling pin in his hand for a while, and then looked at Yang Yi's back, not knowing what to do. Uncle, go ahead and hit me. No matter how you hit me. As long as you can vent your anger, it's fine. It's my fault. I deserve to be punished. Yang Yi said without turning his head. Yang Yi was really prepared to be beaten up. Therefore, after he knelt down, he had already circulated his energy to protect the vital parts of his body. Emohenian didn't say anything, but he only held the rolling pin in his hand. For a while, the veins on his right hand bulged, and for a while his knuckles turned white. After a while, he loosened his grip. Yes, when he first heard about Yang Yi's news, Emohenian really wanted to take a shotgun and spray this stinking brat to death. Even when he got off the plane and went to buy a kitchen knife, he couldn't find one and could only buy a rolling pin. Emohenian even thought about breaking Yang Yi's dog legs. Emohenian's resentment had been accumulated for too long. In addition, his temper wasn't good to begin with. If Yang Yi dared to talk back, he would really hit him with the rolling pin. However, Yang Yi acted like he was really asking for punishment, putting on a posture of accepting any beating or scolding. The opportunity was in his hands, but Emohenian couldn't bring himself to do it. He raised the rolling pin, then put it down silently. Emohenian wasn't stupid, and his temper wasn't really irritable to the point of fighting and killing. In the end, he was just a weak scholar who became a farmer halfway through his career and looked boorish. He was the legendary all-mouthy king. His mouth was unforgiving, and he was good at scolding people. However, Emohenian couldn't really use such a thick rod to hit someone. Moreover, if he really beat Yang Yi to death, what would happen to his daughter and granddaughter? Chapter 450. To hit or not to hit? That was the question. Emohenian looked at the rolling pin in his hand and frowned. He didn't want to think that he was being soft-hearted. Now he found a reason. He felt that the rolling pin he bought was not good. It was all because the one he bought was too thick. If he swung it down, he didn't know what would happen to the person who was hit. If it was some other branch or whip that could be broken, he should be able to do it. For a moment, they were in a deadlock. Yang Yi's back was facing Emohenian, and Emohenian didn't move or say anything. The atmosphere was awkward and tense. Yang Yi's heart was in a mess. He didn't know what his father-in-law meant. Was he going to punish him by kneeling? If this could really appease the old man, Yang Yi was willing to kneel. He had listened to his father's request to kneel as punishment. His father-in-law was also a father in another sense. How could he favor one and discriminate against the other? After some time, Emohenian frowned. With his hands behind his back and the rolling pin still in his hand, he slowly walked to the front of Yang Yi. However, his eyes were moving all over Yang Yi's body. If Emohenian wasn't Murphy's father, he would have been beaten by Yang Yi for looking at him like this. How could a man stare at another man's naked muscles like this? Finally, when Yang Yi felt a little uncomfortable, Emohenian opened his mouth and said suspiciously, "The newspaper said that you are a novelist and a songwriter?" He started to ask questions. He was willing to communicate. Was there a turning point? Yang Yi quickly replied, "Yes." However, Emohenian sneered again. His tone was exactly the same as when he was unhappy with Yang Yi. He said, "Is there a writer like you? With scars all over your body, I think you are from a gang." He even used a Taiwanese accent. Old Mo's Taiwanese accent was even stronger than Murphy's. After all, Murphy had been neutralized by the language system in Hong Kong and the mainland. Yang Yi understood what he meant. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The scars on his body from his time as a soldier had actually caused the old man to misunderstand. Objectively speaking, there weren't many scars on Yang Yi's body, and they weren't that shocking. Basically, it was just a small scar. In the past, when he was fighting in the jungle, it was inevitable that he would encounter close combat. Yang Yi's skills were good, so even if he was injured in a fight, it would not be too serious. Basically, it would be some cuts from a knife, or he would be stabbed or cut by some shrubs or broken branches during a fight. It was not that there were no bullet wounds, but those were on the arms. Moreover, The bullet penetrated the muscles. The wound was not big, and after it healed, it was difficult to see because it was usually covered by clothes. Moreover, Yang Yi only had this one gunshot wound. After all, he was also a human, not a god on TV. If he really was shot many times, even if he was lucky enough to survive every time, his body would be riddled with holes. It was impossible for him to continue serving in a special forces unit like Zhang Lang, which had a high intensity of combat. Those scars were because when he was a soldier, he didn't care about these things at all. To stop the bleeding, he just needed to bandage it casually. As for any ointment that could remove scars, they didn't exist. How could a real man not have any scars on his body? However, these scars in Mohinian's eyes were very similar to the gangsters he saw on the streets of Baobei when he was young. Moreover, Yang Yi was big and burly, so he fit the role of a thug. Yang Yi could only patiently explain to the old man, "Uncle, I used to be a soldier." A soldier? Mohinian suddenly understood, and for some reason he heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, the scars on Yang Yi's body were much more pleasing to the eye. However, he still said unhappily, "A soldier? I used to serve in the military when I was in Baobei. What's so strange about that? There are no wars these days. You little soldiers don't even know if you can hold a gun. Who are you trying to fool with scars all over your body?" Mohinian was probably talking about when he was young, before Baobei returned. However, Yang Yi was a little unhappy with the old man's words. Moreover, he also wanted to find an excuse to get up. It was uncomfortable to kneel on the ground. Therefore, when he saw Yang Yi suddenly jump up from the ground, Mohinian was shocked. However, he respectfully put his legs together and saluted. He shouted, "Yang Yi from China's XXXX country, formerly under the Southwest Military Region's Battle Wolf Special Forces. Greetings to the leader." Mohinian wasn't used to Yang Yi's solemn salute. He was stunned for a moment before he asked in embarrassment, "What are you doing? Who's your leader?" "You're my leader? You used to be a soldier too. We have the same experience. Moreover, you're my elder. Although we're not on the same level, it's not wrong to call you leader." Yang Yi was secretly happy. He put his legs together again and shouted with his head held high, "Hello, leader." Mohinian was really confused by Yang Yi's shouting. He didn't know where to start scolding Yang Yi. After a while he waved his hand and said in annoyance, all right. Don't stand there and salute. We don't do that." "Yes." Yang Yi put his legs together again and replied loudly. His voice was loud and clear, causing the whole study to buzz. Mohinian couldn't take it anymore. However, Mohinian probably didn't realize it himself. He heard that Yang Yi used to be a soldier. Moreover, from his self-introduction, he used to be a soldier in the Special Forces. In addition, he heard from Murphy that it was Yang Yi who saved her that she did that. Mohinian's impression of Yang Yi had changed quite a bit. However, Mohinian still couldn't accept Yang Yi. This pent-up anger of more than 5 years wouldn't dissipate so easily. At this moment, the commotion in the study made Murphy worried. Yang Yi was shouting and yelling. Could it be that the two of them were fighting? Murphy couldn't sit still. She got up and pushed open the door to the study, wanting to stop the fight. However, the atmosphere in the study was unusually harmonious. Mohinian sat at the side with no expression. Yang Yi didn't say anything either. It felt like a movie. However, Murphy was dumbfounded. She saw that Yang Yi was shirtless. This looked very strange. Yang Yi turned his head and saw Murphy. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "Murphy, quickly boil a pot of water. I want to make tea for Uncle. Uncle, I have a pack of top-grade frozen top oolong here. A friend gave it to me. I heard from Murphy that you like it the most." However, Mohinian waved his hand and said impatiently, "I don't drink it. I don't like it." "Fei, does he usually order you around like this?" Mohinian glared at his daughter. Murphy was stunned. She felt the change in her father's attitude. Although it was still stiff, it wasn't like before. It seemed like there was more room for negotiation. Yang Yi understood. He smiled and said, "I didn't think it through. I'll go boil the water. Uncle, please wait a moment." "Wait, put on your clothes properly. Murphy hurriedly stopped him. She took Yang Yi's shirt and helped Yang Yi fix his clothes. When Mo Henian saw this, he felt extremely displeased. He couldn't help but snort again. Yang Yi went out to boil the water. In the process, Mo Xiaowan ran over and gossiped about whether he was beaten up. After knowing that he wasn't, this girl actually showed a regretful expression. However, it was already very late. After Mo Xiaowan finished her meal, she hurriedly said goodbye to Murphy and rushed back. At this time, Shishi also came into the kitchen. Yang Yi thought that Shishi wanted her father to play with her. He picked her up and said softly, "Sorry, Dad can't accompany you today because your grandfather is here." "Papa, let me tell you a secret." The little girl pouted and sat unhappily in her father's arms. Chapter 451. There was a secret? This little girl still had a little secret? Yang Yi's curiosity was piqued. He asked, "Well, tell me, what's the secret?" "Mom just cried." Shishi asked her father to turn his head. She leaned close to her father's ear, covered her mouth with her little hand and whispered. "Mom cried." Yang Yi understood that Shishi was talking about what had just happened. Yes, but Mom said that she didn't cry, but sand got into her eyes." Shishi leaned over again and whispered. "Mom didn't tell the truth." "I know. You know that?" Yang Yi asked in surprise. The little girl nodded seriously and said, Mom didn't get any sand in her eyes. I blew on Mom's eyes, but I didn't see any sand." Yang Yi found it funny and said, "Maybe you missed it. The sand might be very, very small." Shishi was stunned for a moment, but she thought for a while, shook her head and said, "No. If sand gets into Cece's eyes, it will hurt a lot, and she won't be able to open her eyes." But Mommy didn't. She had the experience of sand getting into her eyes. However, Yang Yi didn't expect that the little girl, who was only 4.5 years old, could be so observant. She could even connect the two things. Of course, Yang Yi was still very proud. He rubbed the little girl's head with a smile and said, "Our Shishi is so smart. You're better than Dad." Shishi anxiously took her father's hand and said, "Papa, did Grandpa scold Mom? That's why Mama cried? Grandpa is not good. Grandpa, I don't like Grandpa anymore." Yang Yi was silent for a moment, and then he said in Shishi's ear, "You can't say that about Grandpa. Although Grandpa has a bad temper sometimes, his intentions are good. Think about it, Dad sometimes gets angry, but it's also for your own good. It's because Dad loves you and wants you to be obedient and not be naughty, right?" Shishi nodded reluctantly and then said, But I don't like Papa to be angry." "Well, Dad won't get angry easily, but Dad wants you to understand, Shishi. Although Grandpa was fierce to her mother, he still loved her and wanted what was best for her. Mom is the same as she is Dad, Mom. They're both his treasures. It's just that it's not appropriate to use it in public. As juniors, we have to learn to understand and be tolerant, right?" Yang Yi said. Cece nodded her head as if she understood something. After comforting Shishi, Yang Yi went to the study with the boiled water. There was a tea set in the study. Mo Fei was right. Mo Henian was a person who liked to drink tea, especially the frozen top oolong. When Yang Yi brewed the frozen top oolong that he got from Lanzhou Kai with the water that had been boiled for a while, and the orange-yellow tea had the fragrance of osmanthus, he couldn't sit still anymore. "Uncle, I bought this best frozen top oolong from someone. I don't know if it's real or fake. You're an expert. Why don't you try it? If it's fake, I won't buy it from him next time." Yang Yi tricked Lanzhou Kai and gave Mo Henian a way out. "Yes, Dad, why don't you try it?" Murphy and Yang Yi had discussed before, and they had a clear division of labor. She held the purple sand teacup with both hands and handed it to her father. Mo Henian hesitated for a moment. He still wanted to keep a straight face and not be nice to Yang Yi. However, he couldn't resist the temptation of the frozen top oolong, which he hadn't drunk for many years, and the fragrance of the best frozen top oolong. He reached out and took a sip. "The tea is good." Mo Henian smacked his lips and carefully recalled the sweetness of the tea. Then he snorted and said, "But this person can't do it. He doesn't know how to make tea." Sure enough, he was full of sarcasm. His tone was very harsh, but Yang Yi was used to it. Uncle, please give me some advice. Yang Yi smiled and said, I'm also afraid of wasting this good tea. Mo Henian seemed to have opened a chatterbox. He sat on the sofa in front of the tea set and said in a disdainful tone, First of all, the water you use to make the tea doesn't taste right. You have to use mountain spring water to make tea. Yang Yi was also a person who liked to drink tea. Of course he knew this. However, he deliberately revealed a flaw to give Mo Henian a chance to vent. Papa, I'm scared. Mo Shaowan went back. She couldn't sit alone in the living room. The little girl stuck her head out and held the open door frame of the study and said timidly, Come here, Shishi. Come and sit with Grandpa and Papa. Yang Yi quickly waved his hand and called the little girl over. Shishi happily ran over and snuggled into her father's arms. However, when Mo Henian saw this scene, he felt a wave of displeasure in his heart. Mo Henian had watched his granddaughter grow up and doted on her in every possible way. However, 3 years of effort couldn't compare to this guy's call. Although he was Shishi's father, how long had he taken care of Shishi? If it was in the past, Shishi would have run to Grandpa's place and asked for delicious candies. Now this bastard appeared. Not only did he steal his daughter, but he also stole his granddaughter. Thinking of this, Mo Henian was so angry that he screamed in his heart. Of course, with his granddaughter around, looking at her innocent big eyes, Mo Henian didn't feel as angry as before. Naturally, he couldn't flare up. Uncle, you're right. I forgot to use spring water. I'll buy some tomorrow and make some for you. Yang Yi smiled and continued to make tea for Mo Henian. However, this pot has to be finished first. It would be a pity to waste it. This good tea is wasted in your hands, Mo Henian said. However, he still drank it. Moreover, it was Yang Yi who brought it to him. You're right. I don't know much about tea. Please give me some pointers. Yang Yi continued to pour tea for Mo Henian. Since you want me to say it, I won't hold back. Your technique is not good. You missed the step of making the pot. On the surface, although Mo Henian's attitude did not improve further, as his conversation with Yang Yi about tea deepened, the relationship between the two seemed to be less stiff than before. In the end, it was still too late. Not only was Shishi yawning, but Mo Henian was also a little tired. After all, the old man was almost 60 years old. His body couldn't compare to Yang Chonggui's. Yang Yi quickly arranged for Mo Henian to rest in the bedroom. This bedroom was already prepared, but he didn't know if Mo Henian would be comfortable. Who's sleeping in this room? Mo Henian asked as he pointed to the secondary bedroom opposite the master bedroom where Shishi slept. I'm sleeping in this room. Yang Yi quickly answered. He even opened the door for the old man to see. Uncle, if you like this room, I can change it for you now. However, your room is better. It's the same as Shishi's room. It's facing south and has good feng shui and air. He didn't believe in these things. The reason why he had been sleeping in the secondary bedroom was that it was separated from the master bedroom by a corridor. It wouldn't be easy to wake Shishi. However, Mo Henian's sharp eyes saw the 2 pillows on the bed. He frowned and turned to look at Murphy, who had just returned from coaxing Shishi to sleep, and said, You're sleeping here too? Yang Yi and Murphy were stunned for a moment. The two of them looked at each other, and then looked at the place where Mo Henian was looking at just now. They instantly understood their oversight. In the previous preparations, they had already packed up Murphy's personal belongings and put them back in the master bedroom. However, they neglected that there were still 2 pillows in Yang Yi's room. Ahem, Uncle, Murphy usually sleeps in the master bedroom, Yang Yi said awkwardly. She usually sleeps in the master bedroom. That means she only sleeps here occasionally? Mo Henian looked unhappy. Murphy muttered unhappily. I'm already married to Yang Yi. What's wrong with sleeping here? Ahem, Murphy, don't talk to your father like that. Yang Yi quickly spoke up before Mo Henian could get angry. Although his tone was reproachful, he kept giving Murphy a look. The situation had already eased a little. He couldn't agitate the old man any further. Mo Henian didn't make a big fuss over nothing. He had stayed abroad for a long time and wasn't so pedantic. He only snorted a little unhappily and glanced at Yang Yi as if warning him. Then he turned and walked to his bedroom. Chapter 452. Emohenian woke up very early, perhaps because he was still jet-lagged, or perhaps because he didn't sleep well. When he got up, the sky outside was still blue, and the sun hadn't risen yet. After groping around for a while, Emohenian put on his clothes and walked out of the room. There was no bathroom in his room. When he went to the bathroom, he passed by Yang Yi's room. He glanced at the closed door and sneered disdainfully. He whispered, "Humph, young man." It was so late, and he was still sleeping in. Emohenian squatted in the bathroom for a while, then washed his face and brushed his teeth. However, he felt a little hungry at this time. If he had known, he would have eaten a little last night. Why did he have to be so stubborn? Emohenian was stubborn yesterday. He didn't eat dinner at all, and only ate some bread on the plane. Just as Emohenian walked to the kitchen to see if there was anything to eat, he heard some movement. He turned around and saw Yang Yi, who was wearing sportswear and carrying a large bag of things, walking up the stairs. "Uncle, you're awake?" Yang Yi saw Emohenian and quickly greeted him. Emohenian frowned and asked, "Where did you go?" Yang Yi raised the bag in his hand and explained, "Oh, it's like this. I'm used to exercising in the morning and buying groceries on the way back." Emohenian looked at Yang Yi suspiciously. He suspected that Yang Yi was purposely showing off in front of him. However, seeing that Yang Yi was sweating so early in the morning, he didn't say anything for the time being. Yang Yi went to the bathroom to take a shower and change into dry clothes as usual before going to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. However, when he came to the kitchen, he saw Emohenian eating an apple while looking at the groceries in the bag. Emohenian heard the movement and looked back. He was a little embarrassed from being caught doing something naughty. He coughed and said, "I was looking at what you bought." After saying that, Emohenian regretted it. Why did he have to force an explanation? Wasn't that just giving himself away? He might as well pretend to be aloof and walk out with a snort. Yang Yi didn't think too much about it. He still felt that it wasn't easy to talk to his father-in-law. He took a step forward and said, "I bought water chestnuts, which are horse hooves. Here are cucumbers, spinach, cabbage, tomatoes, beef, fresh shrimp." After he finished, Yang Yi smiled and said, "Uncle, I heard from Murphy that you run your own farm. The food you eat must be very healthy. I also try my best to buy the best ingredients, but compared to your farm, there is still a gap." Emohenian didn't comment. He waved his hand and said, "Don't always say that foreign countries are good. I think your dishes are also good. It's just that the beef is a little bad. It can't be compared with our own cattle." Murphy was woken up by the vibration of her phone. Mo Shawan called to tell her that Neo Miling would have a meeting at the company tomorrow. The meeting was mainly to sort out the gains and losses caused by the previous scandal with Murphy, summarize it, and ask Murphy if she wanted to go. Murphy hadn't made a decision about tomorrow's matter. However, she went to bed early last night and didn't feel sleepy now. She tucked Shishi in, put on her clothes, and walked out of the bedroom. The kitchen door wasn't closed. The sound of the kitchen hood and Yang Yi's and Emohenian's voices could be heard. Murphy was a little surprised. Although she hadn't washed her face or combed her hair, she still couldn't help but walk over to see what was going on. When Murphy walked over, Yang Yi heard the noise but Murphy didn't notice. So when Murphy looked over, she saw her father personally cooking while Yang Yi helped pass the seasoning. Seeing this scene, Murphy was very surprised. If she just looked at this scene, she wouldn't have guessed that Emohenian and Yang Yi would be at daggers drawn yesterday. Why did it seem like the situation had improved after one night? At this moment, Emohenian also noticed it. He turned to look at Murphy and felt a little embarrassed. He could only say with a straight face, "Don't misunderstand. I'm cooking this dish for Shishi." It turned out that when Yang Yi was trying hard to show off his culinary skills, Emohenian asked him to stop for a moment and make room for him to cook a plate of beef with egg. Actually, Emohenian just didn't want to admit it. At this moment, anyone could see the change in his attitude towards Yang Yi. Perhaps the more he understood, the more he could see Yang Yi's good points. "It's fine. You guys continue." Murphy was happy in her heart, but she didn't expose them. She turned and went to wash up. Because of Emohenian's arrival, Yang Yi really made a sumptuous breakfast. When Murphy came out of the bathroom, Yang Yi was still busy in the kitchen, while Mo Henian sat at the dining table with his hands crossed. In front of him were several dishes, one of which was the beef with egg made by Mo Henian. "Papa, can I have a taste?" Murphy took the washed dishes and placed them on the table. She deliberately acted coquettishly to Mo Henian and said, "I haven't eaten your dishes in a long time." Mo Henian snorted and nodded. Murphy smiled and picked up a piece of beef with a tender yellow scrambled egg. Then she gave Mo Henian a thumbs up and said, "Papa, you're still a treasure. It's delicious." Mo Henian raised his eyebrows proudly, but he didn't laugh. He only asked, "Usually at home he also cooks for you?" "That's right. You also know that I don't know how to cook," Murphy said softly. "Yang Yi doesn't let me do all the housework at home. He usually takes care of me." Saying this, Murphy's face was brimming with a happy smile. She said this from the bottom of her heart. Mo Henian carefully looked at his daughter's face, but he didn't continue this topic. Instead, he changed the topic and said, "This morning, I saw that kid. I don't know where he went sneakily." Before he finished, Murphy explained with a smile, "You mean Yang Yi went to buy groceries in the morning? He has to exercise every day. Do you see the mountain behind him? Usually Yang Yi has to run over it and then go to the market to buy groceries." Mo Henian asked in surprise, "Every day?" "Yes, every day." Murphy nodded affirmatively. "Except for the rainy days, but he will also exercise at home on rainy days." Mo Henian's impression of Yang Yi was gradually improving. However, he didn't immediately change his attitude towards Yang Yi. When he should be unhappy, he was still unhappy. When he should be cold, he still wouldn't smile at Yang Yi. She was woken up by Murphy. After washing her face and brushing her teeth, she wanted to eat breakfast with her parents and grandfather. "Try this dish. This is the slippery egg beef that grandfather specially made for you." Murphy tactfully picked up this dish for Shishi. "I want to eat this." Shishi didn't move her chopsticks. She pointed at the shrimp balls that Yang Yi fried and said, "Try the beef that grandfather fried first. Have you forgotten? This is your favorite food." Murphy was a little embarrassed. She looked at Mo Henian's dark face and could only continue to persuade him. "Eat the beef first, then eat the shrimp later." Yang Yi also joined in the persuasion. "You have to eat a little of everything. That way, you will have enough nutrition." "Okay then." Fortunately, the little girl had enough sleep and didn't have a temper when she woke up. Although she was a little unwilling, she still listened obediently. However, after she finished both dishes, Mo Henian was still a little unconvinced. He asked, "Shishi, which do you think is better? Grandpa's beef or this shrimp?" "The shrimp is better," Shishi answered without hesitation. After the little girl finished speaking, she asked her mother to pick up the dish that she wanted to eat, completely ignoring her grandfather's dark face. Yang Yi hurriedly picked up a piece of slippery egg beef with his chopsticks. As he chewed, he said, "Both are delicious. Uncle, the meat and eggs that you fried are very well done." Shishi doesn't like it. "Maybe it's because the quality of the beef we sell here isn't good. The news always says that it's soaked beef. It's all my fault. I didn't buy it well." Mo Henian looked deeply at Yang Yi. However, what was strange was that even though he saw Yang Yi's eyebrows raise when he picked up his food, he didn't say anything. Actually, Mo Henian already had a conclusion after tasting Yang Yi's dishes. However, he was still a little unconvinced and wanted to win back some ground with Shishi. Who would have thought that Shishi would be so honest? Chapter 453. The second day of his father-in-law's visit went by smoothly. Although Shishi went to the kindergarten, Murphy was still there. Mo Henian didn't give Yang Yi a good look, but he didn't speak with sarcasm like yesterday. Today, he mainly focused on learning about the surrounding environment, especially the flower bed downstairs. In the evening, Yang Yi went to pick up Shishi. At the kindergarten, Teacher Mu gave him a notice. The kindergarten will hold a spring fun sports meet with the most unique characteristics of Springfield Kindergarten this Friday afternoon, which is tomorrow afternoon. Yang Shi's father, are you free to attend? This little girl wants to participate in the sports meet? Yang Yi was a little surprised. He turned to ask the little girl who was still absent-minded. Shishi, what event did you sign up for? Ah. Shishi was a little confused at first. After Mr. Mu explained again, the little girl raised her head and said with a bright smile, I want to run with Excian. Run with Excian? Are you going to race with Excian? Yang Yi asked with a smile. He knew who would win without the competition. No, our running competition requires 2 children to work together. When the time comes, there will be a rope to tie the 2 children together. Mr. Mu helped to explain. In fact, it was similar to 2 people running on 3 legs, but Mr. Mu gestured at the waist. Maybe he was worried that the 2 people running on 3 legs would hurt the children. But Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of vision did his daughter have? What kind of teammate did she choose? Well, Dad will definitely come to watch you in Excian's competition. You have to urge her to exercise. Let's work together. Yang Yi said to Shishi and nodded to Mr. Mu. Papa, I want Mom to come too. Shishi let her father carry her. Then she whispered in his ear. Mom can't. Mom has to go to work. Murphy did have something to do. On the 3rd day, she got into Mo Xiaojuan's car to pick her up at 10 o'clock and headed to the company for a meeting. Before leaving, Murphy looked upstairs worriedly and whispered to Yang Yi. Is that okay? If I'm not at home? Don't worry, your father has gradually accepted me, but he still needs an opportunity. He might not know how to express his feelings. Yang Yi comforted her. Besides, I think it's not a bad idea to let me spend some time alone with him. Maybe the opportunity will come. Mo Fei nodded gently and said in a low voice, Then don't fight. Yang Yi patted Murphy's shoulder and nodded with a smile, making her feel at ease. Murphy and Mo Xiaowan went to see Niu Meiling after she arrived at the company. Mo Fei, is your father still in good health? The last time I saw him was about 10 years ago. Niu Meiling found out from Mo Xiaowan the reason why Murphy had been pushing back the jobs these days. Not only was she not angry, but she also showed concern as if she was a good friend. Perhaps it was because Murphy and Yang Yi's relationship had been exposed. Although she did not do it personally, she was inextricably linked to her. Therefore, Niu Meiling felt a little guilty, so she was very friendly in front of Murphy. He's okay. His blood pressure has been a little high for the past 2 years, but overall he's not bad. Murphy replied calmly as usual, neither too close nor too far. After all, Mo Fei was an artist who was about to leave Tianmei, so Niu Meiling still held some grudges against her. So after the small talk, the two didn't talk much. Soon Mo Fei also left Niu Meiling's office. The reason why Niu Meiling called all the artists and agents of the company back for a meeting this time was not because she had found out who exposed Mo Fei's information, but because she wanted to make an extension of what happened to Mo Fei this time. She wanted to warn all the artists that those who were prohibited from falling in love in the contract must stay clean and concentrate on developing their own acting career. The managers also had to keep an eye on their artists' relationships. If anything happened to them, such as falling in love, falling out of love, or experiencing setbacks, they had to follow up and report to the company in a timely manner. This report is very important. The company needs to know your situation before we can take the right measures. Niu Meiling said. Mo Fei and the others handled this incident very well. They used their sincerity to exchange for the fans' understanding, and they also kept in touch with the company's public relations department, so that the two sides would not say different things. Niu Meiling also praised Murphy. In fact, Zhu Jie wanted Niu Meiling and Jian Chua to apologize to Murphy, but Niu Meiling could not bring herself to do that. Speaking of Zhu Jie, Niu Meiling's face became serious. She asked, "Oh right, Zhu Jie, why didn't your manager come to the meeting?" Normally, Du Luan was the one who came to the meetings. Zhu Jie was a lazy bum. But now, it was the opposite. Zhu Jie was sitting in the meeting room, but Du Luan was nowhere to be seen. I don't know. Du Luan's phone has been switched off for the past few days. I can't find him. Zhu Jie scratched his head, looking depressed. Not far away, Zhen Zhen, who was sitting next to Jian Chua, was stunned and frowned. Let's not talk about him. You have to be careful too. Later, tell Du Luan to report to the company if anything happens, Niu Meiling said to Zhu Jie. She was also worried about her nephew. He was too jumpy and was a playboy. Not to mention dating, who knew how many girls in the company had flirted with him. After the meeting, Jujie saw Murphy and Mo Xiaowan tidying up and walking out of the office. He hurriedly ran after them. Sister Murphy, Sister Murphy. Jujie ran to the stairs and greeted Murphy and Mo Xiaowan with a smile. Jujie, what are you doing? Mo Xiaowan acted as if she was facing a formidable enemy. She shielded Murphy behind her. She kept looking around to see if there were any hidden cameras. Hey, I'm not doing anything. I'm here to apologize. Jujie quickly explained. Apologize for what? Mo Xiaowan asked suspiciously. Because in the past I wanted to be famous so badly. That's why I wanted to create a scandal with Sister Murphy. Now that I know it's wrong, I want to apologize to Sister Murphy. I'm really sorry for causing you trouble in the past, Jujie said. Murphy and Mo Xiaowan's expressions softened. Murphy nodded gently and said, forget it. It's all in the past. Jujie smiled and said, one more thing. Sister Murphy, please tell Yang Yi that I haven't given up on the matter of your photos being leaked. I've been working hard to help investigate it. Please give me more time. I promise to give you a satisfactory answer. You know Yang Yi? Mo Xiaowan asked in surprise. She couldn't believe her ears. No discord, no concord. Anyway, we're on the same side now. Jujie smiled awkwardly and said, last time, I was the one who persuaded my aunt not to care about you not renewing your contract. So it's you. Murphy understood. She finally understood who Yang Yi's relationship was. However, since Jujie had a relationship with Yang Yi, why did he force her to create a scandal with him? After Jujie left, Mo Xiaowan answered her doubts. Didn't Jujie say that no discord, no concord? He probably caused trouble before and brother-in-law was unhappy, so he taught him a lesson. As a result, Jujie's relationship with brother-in-law has improved. I was wondering why this Jujie has been so honest in the past 2 months. Murphy suddenly understood. She didn't think too much about it. She felt that it was too complicated and there was no need to think about it thoroughly. When they returned to their office, Mo Xiaowan's stomach felt uncomfortable. She quickly rummaged through Murphy's bag. Sister, do you still have the sanitary pads I bought for you last time? My period should be here. It's in there. You put it there yourself. I haven't used it yet. Murphy was busy texting Yang Yi to ask about the situation at home. She didn't even raise her head as she replied. After a while, Mo Xiaowan came out. She smiled and asked, Sister, why don't you use it? Don't tell me you don't like this brand anymore? No, I just haven't come yet. I don't need it. Murphy was chatting with Yang Yi while she absent-mindedly said to Mo Xiaowan. Really? Counting the days, you should have come at the beginning of the month. Mo Xiaowan mumbled. However, Murphy didn't want to continue the conversation. Chapter 454. Mo Fei was now worried that if she was not at home, would Yang Yi be able to deal with her father? However, she seemed to be worrying too much. At this moment, Yang Yi and Mo Henian were talking loudly in the study. Yang Yi's study was very spacious and bright during the day. The spring breeze gently swayed the muslin curtains, creating circles of ripples. The white mist from the boiling mountain spring water also added a lot of color to the room. It was different from the first day when Mo Henian was extremely displeased with Yang Yi. Today, although Mo Henian still had a straight face, his tone was not very harsh. Moreover, he was more gentle as he instructed Yang Yi to use a different cup lid brewing method to make tea for him. This requires a lot of technique. Look at me. When pouring, the position of the cup lid, what kind of strength and angle do you use to prevent the tea leaves from falling out? Also, how can the tea be poured smoothly and not scalded? Mo Henian taught seriously. Yang Yi was also engrossed in learning. He did not hold back. He really did not know how to make tea like the old man taught him. He had only seen it on television before. However, Yang Yi understood tea. His body was nimble and he learned quickly. Not long after, he could use 3 fingers to complete the operation of pouring tea. His thumb and middle finger pinched the edge of the bowl, and his index finger gently clasped the cup lid. Seeing that Yang Yi was learning well, Mo Henian was also relieved. However, he did not fake his words and did not give any praise. Instead, he said indifferently, "You have to change this cup. The cup lid and the edge of the lid have to be wider. The lid also has to be higher. Otherwise, it will be easy to burn your hand. Later, I'll go and pick a better one." Yang Yi nodded his head smoothly. With his level, it was basically impossible for him to burn his hand. Mo Henian drank 2 mouthfuls of tea. His addiction to smoking came up. He took out a polished pipe from his chest. This was given to him by Yang Yi yesterday. Initially, Mo Henian didn't want to accept it, but Murphy persuaded him. Moreover, the pipe was indeed not bad. It was said that it was made from the roots of a 60-year-old Phoebe. It was all handmade, with complete patterns and no flaws. Its appearance was polished as exquisite as agate. Not to mention old masterly. Even she felt that it was a beautiful toy when she saw it. She wanted it. Mo Henian smoked a cigarette while drinking tea. Then he flipped through Journey by Night. This book was the one mentioned in the news a few days ago, which made him have a deeper prejudice against Yang Yi. Coincidentally, he saw a sample book in Yang Yi's bookshelf, so he took it down to read. Through what he had seen and heard with his own eyes, Mo Henian felt that Yang Yi was not as bad as he had imagined. At least, he could not find the existence of the devil mentioned in the news. Therefore, Grandpa Sheng really wanted to find out where the devil mentioned in the book that was mentioned in the newspaper was. But as he read, Mo Henian began to sink deeper into the plot described in the book, as well as the oppressive social situation. He frowned, and from time to time, revealed a thoughtful expression. "Have you lived in Taiwan before?" Mo Henian finally couldn't hold back and asked. "No, I've never been out to sea." Yang Yi shook his head. "Then how do you know so much about Taiwan's situation in that era?" Mo Henian asked suspiciously. The book introduced unfinished buildings, single-parent families, the living difficulties of single mothers like Shi Wendai, and this. The page Mo Henian flipped open was the plot of Xiao Yicheng and Jiang Li at the beginning of their relationship. The hairstyle he was referring to, medium long hair with bangs on the forehead and hair pulled back on both sides, was one of the more popular hairstyles for women in Taiwan during that era. "It's hard to describe these without any experience," Mo Henian said. But for some reason, he looked at Yang Yi with a much friendlier gaze. Perhaps it was because he felt the same way? When he read this novel, he was deeply moved. This was because the time period described in the novel was when he was still studying in Taiwan. At a young age, he had experienced the bursting of Taiwan's economic bubble and the bankruptcy of countless enterprises. He had experienced the confusion and chaos of Taiwan. He had also seen the dark examples of people forgetting their family and humanity for the sake of pursuing profits. "Uncle, I was still very young in the era you're talking about. Furthermore, I was still living in the countryside in Anqing. How could I have experienced it?" Yang Yi smiled. "I just read some books and carefully studied the social situation of Taiwan at that time." Yang Yi even took out close to 10 books about Taiwan's social studies from the bookshelf in the study room for Mo Henian to read. After reading so many books, Mo Henian was 80% convinced. But he still wanted to nitpick and test Yang Yi, so he asked, "In the early 1980s, there was a serious mass suicide in Taiwan that shook the world. Do you know about it?" Yang Yi nodded. "I know. It was because the stock prices plummeted, and they were heavily in debt. They couldn't accept it, so the 6 members of the Baonan family committed suicide with gas." As if they had found a common topic, Mo Henian and Yang Yi started discussing the social situation in Taiwan. Mo Henian's satisfaction with Yang Yi gradually increased. As for the devil's side of Yang Yi that was described in the entertainment newspapers, Mo Henian was, after all, a high-level intellectual. How could he not see that it was just a dramatic description? He wouldn't deny an author's character based on the content of a work. In the afternoon, Springfield Kindergarten was holding a fun sports event. Yang Yi invited Mo Henian to watch Shishi's competition. At first, the old man was reserved for a while, but when he remembered that it was his granddaughter's competition, Missouri Henian pretended to be impatient and said, "Let's go. I don't want you to nag in my ear." Although he was reluctant to go, the old man had dressed up meticulously before going out. He wore a Hawaiian-style shirt with coconut tree prints on it. He didn't wear a windbreaker, only a wide scarf with Indian patterns. He wore jeans, riding boots, and a white cowboy hat on his head. As he appeared on the streets of China, he always attracted a lot of attention. This old man didn't want to be too fashionable. When Mo Henian appeared at Springfield Kindergarten, he immediately replaced Yang Yi as the children's new favorite. However, the children didn't throw themselves at him like they did with Yang Yi. They just surrounded him curiously, and their innocent eyes revealed a look of worship. It was the first time they had seen someone dressed like this. The hat, scarf, and boots were all very novel. Murmurs of "so cool" rose and fell one after another. "This is my grandpa, my grandpa." She squeezed out from among her friends, and jumped into her grandpa's arms with joy. Then, she proudly introduced him to the other children. She didn't wear a skirt today. She wore a hoodie and sweatpants. The wine-red color and the bright texture of cotton wool made her look very lively. Of course, the most important thing was that the little girl's arms and legs were thin and long. No matter what clothes she wore, she looked very slim and beautiful. She didn't look bloated at all. Chun Shuryan shouted in the crowd. She isn't your grandpa fierce? I don't think he's fierce at all. He's very handsome." Mo Henian's old face that had been tense for a few days couldn't hold it in anymore. He couldn't help but smile after being praised by the little girl. He pulled down the brim of his hat and gave Chun Shuryan a cowboy bow, saying, "This little girl is knowledgeable. Not bad, not bad. How is Grandpa fierce? Grandpa has always been nice." Mo Henian didn't forget to gently pat Shishi's little butt in his arms and said a little reproachfully, "He." The little girl leaned on Mo Henian's shoulder and laughed a little embarrassedly. "It's super cool. Grandpa, can I wear your hat?" Chun Shuryan plucked up her courage and asked while jumping up and down. "I want to wear it too. I like this hat too." Lon Xian squeezed into the crowd and hurriedly shouted. Shishi got down from her grandpa's arms and squeezed in front of him to help him maintain order. "You can't wear it together. You have to line up one by one." Okay then. Being so popular, Mo Henian was naturally very proud. The sullen feeling of being defeated by Yang Yi at home was swept away. He generously took off his hat and handed it to the children, not forgetting to glance at Yang Yi. Chapter 455. In this fun sports event held by the kindergarten, there naturally wouldn't be any major events such as the 800-meter run or the 1,000-meter run. Taking into account the physical condition of the children, even the cooperative race that Shishi and Lon Xian participated in was very short. The straight track was only 15 meters long, and after turning back, it was only 30 meters. Of course, for the little ones, this was not a small challenge. What's more, the two children in each group had to be tied together with a rope and their waists to complete the return 30-meter race. Before the race began, Teacher Mu heard that Shishi's grandfather had come. Seeing that he was so popular, he invited him to be the starter and referee of the return race. Mo Henian gladly agreed. The old man, who was dressed in a cowboy costume, waved the yellow starter flag in his hand and stood at the starting point. This cool appearance attracted the worship of many children. The starting point was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. It was Teacher Mu who helped to clear the way so that the race could proceed normally. Yang Yi was tying the rope for Shishi and Lon Xian. The rope had to be tied around their waists and tied into a loop to wrap the two girls together. Ehe, Xian and I are hugging. He didn't know what was so funny, but the two girls were hugging each other and were very happy. Shishi, don't press on me, I can't walk. Lon Xian also giggled. The two girls hugged each other, twisting here and there, and having a lot of fun. Their bell-like laughter filled Yang Yi's ears, but it also made Yang Yi unable to tie the rope, because he didn't want them to hug each other and walk side by side, but the two of them ran side by side and synchronously. Okay, listen to me. Yang Yi had to hold them down and make them face him. He said seriously, "This race, do you want to win?" "Yes." Lon Xian quickly answered. "I really want to," Sisi said. Super. Lon Xian refused to be outdone. "I really want to." She giggled. There was no end to this. Yang Yi had no choice but to interrupt them. Well, I know you all want to win, so you have to listen to the coach, which is my command. Otherwise, you can't win. Yang Yi wasn't exaggerating. Shi and Lan Xian were a pair of strong opponents. Just now, Yang Yi heard the teacher shouting for Wang Shijuan and Wang Xiyun. This pair of siblings definitely had better tacit understanding than Shi and Lan Xian. The two little girls finally quieted down. They blinked their big eyes and listened attentively. Yang Yi took the opportunity to tie the rope for them. It wasn't too tight, but it wasn't loose enough to fall off. He also cleverly designed 2 rings for Shi and Lan Xian to hold respectively. Shi Xian air. I will shout 1 and 2. When I shout 2, you take a step this way. Yang Yi clapped his hands to beat the beat. Shi was more sensitive to the beat. When she heard her father shout 2, she took a step with her left foot. Lan Xian was a little slower, but she also took a step with her right foot. Yang Yi helplessly saw that Shi, who had longer legs, obviously took more steps than Lan Xian. This won't do. Shi, don't run so fast. Slow down. Lift this foot. Yang Yi asked Shi to lift her left foot. Then he grabbed the little girl's ankle and pulled her to the same stride length as Lan Xian. In this competition, you have to take such a big step. Do you remember? Yang Yi looked up and saw Shi's confused little eyes. She seemed to be a little distracted. Then she nodded as if she understood. It's okay. Let's give it a try. Time was running out. The competition was about to start. Yang Yi said, how about this? I want you to use the same stride. For example, when I shout 1, you take a step with your left foot together. Then when I shout 2, you take a step with your right foot together. Similarly, the other foot is the supporting foot. Don't move. Shi nodded, but Lan Xian said in confusion, Uncle Yang, I don't understand what you're saying. It means that when I shout 1, take a step with this foot. When I shout 2, take a step with this foot. This way you can walk forward together. Yang Yi had to grab Lan Xian's ankle and teach her. This little girl seemed to be unable to distinguish between left and right. Yang Yi thought to himself, Shi is still the smart one. However, when he started to shout the beat training, Lan Xian successfully walked forward, but Shi still took a step with her left foot. The distance between her 2 feet was even bigger. No. Shi realized that she was holding back and quickly withdrew her right foot. However, the two still staggered a little. The rope pulled Lan Xian and made her stagger. Aya, Shi, you're wrong. Lan Xian hurriedly shouted. Shi raised her head and looked at her father with her big eyes in confusion. She also felt that something was wrong, but she didn't know what was wrong. Yang Yi covered his forehead and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seemed that Shi didn't understand. She just nodded out of habit when she was in a daze. Shi, you can't pretend that you understand when you don't understand. If you don't understand, you have to ask Daddy. Yang Yi squatted down and continued to teach his daughter the steps and rhythm. After a while, Mo Henian waved the flag and shouted, Children of the 3rd group of middle class, hurry up and review. The competition is about to start. The old man's shouting was very rhythmic. It was as if he was herding a cow. It attracted many young fans who were watching and imitated him. They also shouted, The competition is about to start. His childish and adorable voice made the parents around him laugh in a friendly manner. There were 5 tracks and 3 groups of children. Shi and Lan Xian were on the track on the right. Yang Yi stood on the side and clapped his hands. He applauded Shi and Lan Xian who were standing on the track. Come on, Shi. Come on, Xian air. Chen Shiyan, Yang Luoqi and Zhaoyu, and their parents who came to watch also cheered for Shi and Lan Xian. Lan Xian was still alright, but the chubby girl waved at Uncle Yang. Cici, on the other hand, seemed a little nervous. The little girl turned her head and looked up at her grandfather. Her little face was tense, and her little mouth unknowingly opened slightly. Children, listen to Grandpa. In a while, Grandpa will blow the whistle, and the flag will be waved down. The competition will start. Before the flag is waved down, you can't run away. Emohenian was very happy and patiently explained the rules. Listen to my rhythm. Shishi, look over here. Daddy will shout 1 2, 1 2. Yang Yi tried to attract his daughter's attention. Emohenian said unhappily, unrelated people are not allowed to interfere with the competition. Shut up. Yang Yi looked embarrassed. He could only whisper to Shishi and Lan Xian. Okay, I can't shout. You can shout on your own. Shishi, you shout 1 2 1 2. The surrounding parents all knew the relationship between Emohenian and Yang Yi. Seeing the two of them at odds, they couldn't help but laugh. Yang Luoqi's mother, Wu Yu, was laughing. She patted Yang Yi's arm and said, why is Shishi's grandfather so funny? As a referee, he's really impartial. Yang Yi could only shake his head with a wry smile. Without their father's help, Shishi and Lan Xian could only rely on themselves. Fortunately, Shishi didn't drop the ball at the crucial moment. Although she had received a lot of information during this period, which made the little girl look a little silly, she still firmly remembered her father's guidance just now. Toot! The whistle sounded. Emohenian leaned forward, swung his arm in a circle, and waved the flag down coolly. This posture made the surrounding children worship him again. The competition began. Chapter 456. Under the request of her upright and plain-spoken grandfather. Her father couldn't help her shout the beat. Her father's clapping sound was drowned out by the cheers of the surrounding children. Shishi was a little flustered, but she still tried hard to remember her father's instructions. She wasn't very confident, but she was very strong as she shouted, 1 2 1 2. The little girl's crisp voice was like a clear stream in this noisy environment. It wasn't loud enough, but it was very clear. At the beginning, the three teams were a little chaotic at the starting point. Every child wanted to compete for first place, so they didn't run at the same speed as their partners. As the ropes were pulled, they bumped into each other, causing the surrounding children to laugh. After all, Shishi and Lan Xian didn't have any special training. Yang Yi's sudden guidance just now couldn't make the two girls form a special muscle memory. So at the beginning, they didn't run at the same pace and squeeze together. Among the three teams, the first ones to adjust were the siblings Wang Shijuan and Wang Xiyun. The two children must have practiced at home, and they had enough tacit understanding. They quickly adjusted and ran forward in small steps. Come on. Shishi Xian air, come on. Yang Yi was anxious and nervous at the side. He clenched his fists. He couldn't shout the beat, but he could still cheer them on. It seemed that Cece's rhythm had taken effect as Lan Xian gradually adjusted to the rhythm. The two girls held hands and began to chase after each other. The third team was slower. There were two boys. They were about the same height, but one ran fast while the other ran slow. The two of them bumped into each other, and even pulled each other in the middle. They fell on their backs on the track. Because they lost their balance first, they struggled for a while before falling, so the fall wasn't heavy. Moreover, they wore thick clothes in spring, so the fall didn't hurt at all. They just felt a little embarrassed. The children next to them were all laughing. I don't want to play anymore. One of the little boys cried. They had basically lost the chance to win the championship. The only thing left was for Shishi and Lan Xian to compete with Wang Shijuan and Wang Xiyun. Wang Shijuan and Wang Xiyun weren't running very fast, but they were very stable. The older brother put his hand on the younger sister's shoulder, and the younger sister pulled on the older brother's waist. They ran step by step, showing a high level of tacit understanding. Shishi and Lan Xian tried their best to catch up, but Lan Xian couldn't run fast either. When she turned back, the chubby girl began to pant. 1 2 1 2. Shishi looked to the front, and her voice sounded a little anxious. She unconsciously sped up the beat. Shishi. Lan Xian pitifully followed her, but she couldn't help but gasp and shout. Slow down, okay? Shishi wanted to keep up with her friends as much as possible, but she also looked at the opponents in front of her anxiously. The little girl didn't know what to say, and could only shout the beat. However, when she sped up a little, she felt the pull of the rope. Her partner couldn't run fast, so she could only slow down a little. It couldn't be said that Lan Xian didn't work hard. She also tried her best to run with her chubby little legs, but she couldn't run fast. In the beginning, Shishi's team showed a good momentum, but gradually, as Lan Xian's physical strength was affected, they slowed down. There was only a little distance left, and it seemed that they couldn't catch up no matter how hard they tried. Come on. Come on. In the last few meters, the children on the side of the field didn't make any more trouble. They seemed to be infected by the intense atmosphere of the competition, and shouted deafeningly with their parents. But unfortunately, under Mo Henian's waving of the flag, Wang Shijuan and Wang Xian reached the finish line first, and Shishi and Lan Xian were a few seconds later. In these few seconds, victory was given away with both hands. Lan Xian leaned on her knees and panted heavily. Her expression couldn't be seen, but Shishi stood there motionlessly. She looked at the happy Wang Shijuan and Wang Xian's siblings with envy in her eyes, but her expression was blank and dazed. Her little figure looked a little lonely. Yang Yi clapped as he walked over with heartache. He shouted, "It's okay, you guys are already very good." And Mo Henian saw this scene too. He waved the flag and shouted, "Let's give our applause to the champion of this competition." Also, this pair of children performed very well just now. They chased to the end. Although they lost, it's a glorious victory. Everyone, let's give them a round of applause, okay? However, no matter how much applause or consolation there was, Shishi didn't seem to listen. When her father untied her, the little girl leaned into her father's arms in low spirits. Her little hands grabbed the front of her father's shirt and fiddled with the buttons. It was Yang Yi's first time seeing Shishi like this. Usually, she was everyone's joker. That sweet smile of hers was enough to lift everyone's mood. But today the little girl seemed like she was going to cry, but she didn't. She looked like she was going to be strong, but her heart was sad. If she were to cry, Yang Yi would think it was normal. He patted the little girl's back gently and said, "It's okay, we didn't win this time. Let's try again next time." Lan Xian, on the other hand, had a big heart. She opened her arms and shouted loudly, "Uncle Yang, can you hug me too? My father and mother didn't come." Yang Yi smiled and hugged Lan Xian in his arms. At this time, Shishi's friends all came over. Chen Shiyan, Nan Zhaoyu, Yang Luoqi, and Wu Yu and Chen Shiyan's mother. "Shishi Xianer, don't be sad, okay?" Yang Luoqi whispered. "Yes, you have worked very hard just now. Auntie saw it. You were very good." Wu Yu clapped her hands and smiled. "I'm not sad." Lan Xian, in Yang Yi's arms, made a face at Yang Luoqi. The children all giggled. However, this didn't seem to have any effect on Shishi. The little girl buried her face in her father's arms. She didn't want others to see her sad face. Perhaps the father and daughter's minds were connected. Yang Yi could roughly understand his daughter's thoughts. He entrusted Lan Xian to Wu Yu, and then carried Shishi to a corner where there was no one, and sat down on a stone chair. "Are you still sad?" Yang Yi put his daughter on his lap, gently held her little face and asked softly, "There will always be winners and losers in a competition." Shishi's mouth twitched. The tears that she had been holding back for a long time finally rolled down. She rubbed her eyes and whispered, But I want to win." "Dad knows you want to win, and Dad also wants you to win. This is a very positive idea." Yang Yi praised first and then said, "But winning and losing are common. When we encounter failure, we can't treat it with sadness, unhappiness, or crying. Instead, we have to think positively. If I lose this time, I will win next time. Don't you think so?" Shishi nodded, but she was still crying. She wiped her tears and cried. This big tabby cat made people feel sorry for her. "Don't rub your eyes with your hands." Yang Yi grabbed the little girl's hand and took out a child's wet tissue. These were the things that he usually carried with him. He wiped her tears. The little girl pursed her lips. It was obvious that she was sad and wronged. However, the little girl enjoyed it when her father wiped her tears. Gradually, her heaving chest calmed down. Yang Yi said softly, "Although you lost today, Dad still wants to praise you. Do you want to hear Dad's praise?" "Yes." Shishi pulled her father's hand away, and her little head leaned over. Then the little girl moved her little, but so that she could squeeze into her father's arms and find a complete support. Chapter 457. You did a great job today in 3 aspects. Yang Yi waved 3 fingers in front of his daughter. Shishi pouted, grabbed her father's hand, and pressed down the other 2 fingers, leaving only the middle finger. Yang Yi stared at his fingers and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But he pretended as if nothing had happened and said, "First of all, you listened very carefully when I told you the tactics, and then you learned very fast." "I learned faster than Xi in air," the little girl whispered. She hadn't recovered yet. Yes. Yang Yi saw that Cici had flipped out her second finger. Although it was somewhat uncomfortable to have her middle finger and ring finger raised side by side, it was still much more pleasing to the eye than having her middle finger raised. He continued, "Second, you did a great job when I couldn't call the beat for you. I didn't expect that you would stand up so bravely and call the beat for Xi in air, and then lead the team forward in an orderly manner." "Papa, you asked me to call the beat." The little girl seemed to be in a better mood, and she rubbed her face in her father's arms shyly. "Yes, but I didn't expect that you could finish it. I'm really surprised." Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's little head and untied her ponytail. Her hair spread out like a black waterfall. At this time, Mo Henian, who had hosted the last race, was worried about his granddaughter, who was in a bad mood just now, and forgot to take the flag back, so he came to find them. However, when Mo Henian saw Yang Yi sitting there with Shishi in his arms, he couldn't help but stop and look at the father and daughter thoughtfully. "What about the last one?" Shishi opened her father's third finger, and said with a little strength in her voice, "The last one, I want to praise you and Xi in air for your fighting spirit," Yang Yi said with a smile. "Did you see that? In addition to the winning team, there was another team. They were very confused and fell down halfway and gave up. But Shishi, you and Xi in air are very good." Unknowingly, Yang Yi had also been influenced by Murphy's Taiwanese accent. He said, "Although we fell behind, we worked hard to catch up to the end." Shishi smiled embarrassedly. "Do you know?" Yang Yi tidied up Shishi's hair so that it wouldn't be in a knot. He said softly, "This kind of fighting spirit is more precious than your victory." "Why?" Shishi asked in confusion. "That's because even though you lost this time, you were brave enough to fight. If you work harder, you might win the next time." Yang Yi turned into the chicken soup master and said, "But if you win now, you won't know where your flaws are and you won't work hard. You might lose the next time." Shishi nodded confusedly. He didn't know if she could really understand, but Yang Yi knew that she could understand what he meant. Now the little girl didn't cry, and she didn't want others to see her sadness anymore. Yang Yi smiled and took the little girl down. He also stood up and said, "Well, since there's nothing else, let's go and play with your friends. I heard that there will be a shooting competition in today's fun sports meet. Chun Shuryan is going to compete. Why don't you go and cheer for her?" "Papa, let's go together." Although Shishi's interest was back, she was still very clingy to her father after crying. She walked forward while holding her father's hand. "Okay." Yang Yi was naturally willing. But when he turned around, Yang Yi saw Mo Henian standing there with concern. Mo Henian put away his complicated expression and said to Yang Yi with a straight face, "Don't cry, right?" "Yes, don't cry. Shishi is very strong." Yang Yi shook the hand that was holding Shishi's and said with a smile, "It's good that you don't cry. It's just a small competition. It's no big deal if you lose." Mo Henian's attitude toward life was still a little different. Cici, on the other hand, felt a little embarrassed for crying just now. She pulled her father's big hand over and covered her eyes. Then she pouted her little mouth and shouted unwillingly, "Don't say it, don't say it." Yang Yi laughed. Okay, I won't say it." "Shishi, come here," Mo Henian called. Shishi put down her father's hand and looked at her grandfather with some confusion. Mo Henian shook the small flag in his hand, smiled, and said, "Come, Grandpa will reward you for finishing the competition. I'll give you a flag." "Really?" The little girl happily let go of her father's hand and ran to her grandfather's side to take the small flag. "Hee, I like to play this." Shishi shook the small flag and played with it happily. It seemed that the lively and cute little girl was back. Yang Yi looked at this scene and was a little unconvinced. He muttered in his heart, "Really, this flag isn't yours?" The sports meet in the afternoon finally came to an end with laughter. The sports meet organized by Springfield Kindergarten was quite interesting. In addition to the aforementioned sports, there was a paper towel blowing competition, a table tennis competition, and so on. Yang Yi was forced to participate in the paper towel blowing competition, and had a lot of fun. After returning home, Shishi told her mother about today's competition, and honestly told her mother that she cried after losing the competition. It's normal to cry. Mom doesn't blame Shishi. On the contrary, Mom blames herself for not making time to watch Shishi's competition and cheer for Shishi, Murphy said with some self-blame. After dinner, Murphy and Yang Yi washed the dishes together in the kitchen, and told him what Zhu Jie said to her today. I know, I'll take care of this, don't worry. Yang Yi nodded thoughtfully. He didn't explain much, and Murphy didn't ask much. If it were Zhen, such a young and beautiful girl, Murphy might ask about the details of how they knew each other, but Zhu Jie was different. Murphy wasn't interested in the complicated relationships between men at all. Yang Yi pondered for a long time and sent a text message to Zhu Jie, asking him to find a way to get the contact information of Teacher Ko, who was currently the #1 suspect in the eyes of Niu Meiling and Zhu Jie. Yang Yi acted as if he was going to settle accounts with Teacher Ko. Although he didn't explicitly say that he would forgive Zhu Jie, Yang Yi gave the signal to ease the tension. This young master was still reliable, and Yang Yi didn't want him to continue spying on others. It wouldn't be good if he went crazy. As for Teacher Ko, although he secretly took photos of himself and Murphy, and in some ways, he was the source of all the trouble, Yang Yi didn't want to do anything to him. Although Teacher Ko followed and secretly took photos for money, he was a man of principles. Once the information was sold, he wouldn't give it to a second person. Yang Yi liked people with principles. Moreover, he knew that sometimes, fighting and killing wouldn't necessarily solve the problem. Since this Teacher Ko had brought him trouble, Yang Yi planned to recruit him into his force. Yang Yi didn't plan to do it personally, but planned to sign a contract with Teacher Ko through the Backwave technology company behind micro-broadcasting. Like other signed self-media, he would bind them to his chariot. This was the main reason why Yang Yi founded micro-broadcasting. He hoped to use this platform to gather more people to help promote Murphy. Of course, it was positive publicity. He didn't care about other people. With micro-broadcasting as a killer weapon, Yang Yi believed that Murphy didn't need to work hard to run announcements and do commercial performances. However, Teacher Ko now gave Yang Yi another idea. Isn't he a paparazzi hunter? I'll give him a chance and support him to become China's #1 paparazzi. Of course, in exchange, Teacher Ko had to use his influence and relationship with the paparazzi to reduce the reports and hype about himself, Murphy, and his family. Even if there were some things that Teacher Ko couldn't handle, with an advance warning, Yang Yi wouldn't be too passive. Chapter 458. It had been almost 10 days since the media exposed the relationship between Murphy and Yang Yi, but the news did not die down. The media was still obsessed with digging up news about Yang Yi or Mu Xiang. They also tried to fabricate their love story from the songs that Mu Xiang wrote for Murphy. People were used to this. However, Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting was exposed because Murphy followed him. Moreover, all the statuses that Yang Yi posted on his micro-broadcasting were related to Shishi. Even though the photos were edited out of the girl's face, anyone could tell that the girl with long legs was his and Murphy's daughter. His micro-broadcasting was exposed, and he gained a lot of fans. At the same time, the media also found a new way to spend money. Seeing that Yang Yi only had his daughter and his cat in his daily life, the media couldn't help but praise him again, saying that Yang Yi was a good family man that was hard to come by in 10,000 years, and that Mo Fei really married the right person. Logically speaking, Yang Yi didn't like it when people boasted like that. In his previous life, the media's flattery was like poison milk. Very few celebrities were spared. He didn't know if the media in this life still had such strong skills. However, Yang Yi also tried to keep a low profile. He did not accept any interviews from the media. He wanted to drag the attention away. But we are going to buy a new house. Recently, There have been reporters coming to our door to interview us. Yang Yi discussed with Murphy. Mo Henian was sitting at the side watching TV, but his ears were pricked up. Do you want to stay at my place? Although I haven't lived there for half a year, I can still clean it up, Murphy asked. There's no need. Our family still has some spare cash. I'll ask Lance Hao Kai to help us find a villa in the area where his family lives. The security measures are perfect. Even if the reporters know about it, they won't be able to follow us in. It's quiet and safe, and the environment and air are very good, Yang Yi explained. I am a little reluctant to leave this place. Murphy looked around reluctantly and said, the flowers downstairs have been planted, but they haven't bloomed yet. It was not to say that this house was very good. In terms of decoration, it was not as good as Murphy's house in the coastal area. However, this place carried too many beautiful memories of Murphy. It's okay. We didn't leave this place behind. We can let Huan Huan and Ding Xiang stay here for the time being. The master bedroom will be reserved for us. We can come back and stay for a few days whenever we want. Yang Yi hugged Murphy's body and said softly, tomorrow let's go see the new villa together. I think you'll like it. Cough cough. Mo Henian knew that there was nothing special about a couple cuddling, but Murphy was his daughter after all. Seeing him cuddling there made him unhappy, so he deliberately coughed loudly. Yang Yi and Murphy hurriedly sat up straight and separated. The next day was Sunday. Shishi didn't have to go to school, so Yang Yi drove the whole family, including Mo Henian, to see the villa. The villa was located at the foot of the mountain with the best feng shui in the Tingshan mountain range. It also had mountains and rivers. Behind it was the lush ninth peak of Tingshan Mountain, and beside it was a stream. Lance Hao Kai's real estate company had built a green path along the way for people to run, ride, or take a stroll after meals. When he heard that Yang Yi's family was coming, Lance Hao Kai, the big boss, personally came to receive them. He even chased away his sales manager and rolled up his sleeves to personally explain to Yang Yi, Murphy, and Elder Mo first of all. Our villas here have strong security features. Not to mention the large number of retired soldiers we hired to build the security force. The people who live in this villa area are either rich or respectable. If you want to buy a villa here, you can't just buy it with money. You also need to pass identity verification. Only rich people with a certain status can live here. So you don't have to worry about security and privacy. It was also because Lance Hao Kai and Yang Yi were good friends, and he knew about Yang Yi's hidden business identity that Yang Yi could buy a villa here. Otherwise, if he was just a celebrity's husband, the villa area's sales team would have politely rejected him. The villas here were built a little like private residences in America. The courtyard did not have high walls, but to adapt to the Chinese mentality, it was surrounded by short evergreen shrubs. However, from the outside, one could still see the lush green lawn inside. This was not a bad thing. With a wide view, it could also make one feel comfortable. The lawn here is very big. Of course, if you like, you can remove it and plant your own flowers. Lance Hao Kai smiled and said, the shrubs that act as the fence will be trimmed by the property management every once in a while. However, inside the fence is your private space. You need to take care of it yourself or hire someone to take care of it. The space was really big. Yang Yi estimated that the courtyard alone was almost 100 square meters, of which more than 60 square meters was the green area, and the rest was the driveway and parking space at the door. The villa had not been handed over to Yang Yi yet, so there were still people to maintain the lawn. It was trimmed neatly like a football field. Shi and Lan Xian were already holding hands happily, running around and stepping on the soft grass. They had a lot of fun. Seeing that Yang Yi was interested in the parking place, Lance Hao Kai explained, this is only a temporary parking place. Moreover, if you don't park, there is also a place for the children to play other things, such as a simple basketball hoop. However, I think that both your and my children are girls. They probably don't know how to play basketball, right? Lance Hao Kai laughed as he said that. He then said, there is also an underground garage in the backyard. I will take you to see it later. Shishi, Xian Air, come here. We are going in to see it. Yang Yi called out. Coming. Shishi responded happily. The two little girls held hands and ran over happily. They were so lively. When they were still changing shoes and entering the villa that had been renovated, she could not help but say to her father, "Papa, Papa, are we going to live here?" "Why, you don't like it?" Yang Yi asked. His daughter's opinion was also very important. "No, I like it very much. Xinair said that her family also lived here. Does that mean that I can go to Xinair's house to play in the future?" the little girl said with a little excitement. Yang Yi laughed. "Of course, you can also invite Xinair to our house." "Ah, great, Xinair. Do you want to come to our house?" The two little girls shouted and jumped excitedly. The villa was a very modern design. It was a small 3-story building. It was not particularly large, but each floor was cleverly designed. Moreover, the white and coffee-colored exterior walls looked natural and elegant. Mo Henian, who used to be an architectural designer, looked around and showed a look of approval. The first floor was mainly the living room, dining room, kitchen and other functional areas. The second and third floors were 5 big bedrooms and a large study. There was also a large balcony and a glass fence on the second floor. Small barbecues and private banquets could be held on the balcony. Of course, on a clear summer night, it was also very romantic to lay out a bed and look at the starry sky. Below the balcony was the parking area that Lans Hao Kai mentioned earlier. At the side of the villa, there was also a small swimming pool. It was really small. With Yang Yi's figure, he could only kick his legs twice in the swimming pool. But a villa with a private swimming pool was already very good. This kind of swimming pool was especially suitable for children. After looking at the villa, compared to the excited children, the adults were much calmer. Mo Henian only felt that the exterior design and structure of the villa were not bad. To him, this small villa was not considered stunning. It was still incomparable to the super mansion that old Mo designed in the US. But Murphy liked this villa. She felt that this villa was very lively. "I don't like houses that are too big. This size is about the same. If it is too big, it will feel too empty and not warm," Murphy said to Yang Yi. "Yes. It doesn't matter where we live. The most important thing is that we can be together." Yang Yi held Murphy's hand and said gently. Chapter 459. After a few days of observation, Mo Henian's impression of Yang Yi had changed drastically. Not only did Yang Yi take care of Murphy and Shishi meticulously, but also Yang Yi's talent and the family business that he could build without relying on Murphy. It could be said that Yang Yi was an impeccable son-in-law. Moreover, Yang Yi gradually found a topic that he could talk about with Mo Henian. Through constant communication, Mo Henian finally let go of the resentment that had accumulated over the past 5 years. However, it was true that father-in-law and son-in-law were enemies. Even though Mo Henian was very satisfied with Yang Yi, he still treated Yang Yi harshly. Even when he smiled, he did not smile at Yang Yi more than a few times. "I accepted you not because of how outstanding you are, but because Murphy is dead set on you. Moreover, what's done cannot be undone. The child is already so big, I can't do anything to you." The old man was still very stubborn when he finally laid all his cards on the table. "If you treat Murphy badly in the future, I will not forgive you." Of course, Mo Henian was not joking. The old man's Remington M870 was already thirsting for blood. Mo Henian's understanding put Yang Yi at ease. As long as Mo Henian didn't yell and kill him like when he first arrived and didn't treat him like an enemy, Yang Yi really wouldn't mind. Putting himself in Yang Yi's shoes, if Cece had a boyfriend in the future, no matter how outstanding he was, it would be difficult for Yang Yi to have a good impression of this guy. However, Mo Henian did not return to the United States immediately. He still wanted to meet Yang Yi's parents. Both of their children were already married and had children. It was impossible for both of their parents not to meet, right? As Murphy was about to hold her 3rd concert in Guangzhou, Mo Henian could only wait for a few more days. In the past few days, Yang Yi had been paying attention to the situation at Tianmei. According to what Murphy said, Duluan's sudden disappearance had finally caught the attention of Tianmei's officials. However, in the residence that the company had arranged for Duluan had left behind some personal items. However, many important items such as his phone, computer, and wallet were missing. It gave people the feeling that he had packed up and left. Du Luan was considered an important employee of Tianmei. Him leaving without a word made Niu Meiling cautious. She was worried that Zhu Jie might have leaked some company secrets to Du Luan during their interactions. Hence, she suggested calling the police and letting the police handle this matter. There was no follow-up news as the police were still investigating. However, this did not affect Murphy. If it wasn't for this incident, Murphy would not have known about Du Luan. After hearing some gossip from Mo Xiaowan, she passed it on to Yang Yi. According to the previous preparations, Murphy would invite Chen Yijie to sing for her concert in Guangzhou. According to Mo Xiaojuan's plan, the newly signed artist, Guazi, would also be invited as a special guest. At first, Guazi refused. He said, "I'm an actor, not a singer." However, Mo Xiaowan had her ways with him. "I'm not asking you to be a singer. I'm just asking you to sing a song at the concert to show your face and increase your exposure. Don't you want to be an actor? When you become famous and have a fan base, you'll have more opportunities to act." Guazi was still a little unwilling. "But I want to be a pure actor. I want to use my acting skills to win the hearts of the audience. I want to use my acting skills to move the director and get an opportunity to act." Mo Xiaowan gave him a merciless blow. "When you're still unknown, what opportunities do you think you'll have? How many directors are willing to give you a chance to play a small role? Or do you think you can become the main character by playing a small role?" "I'm the main character in Fairy Tale." Guazi struggled to say. "That's a mini-movie. It's still very different from a real movie," Mo Xiaowan said. Ding Xiang also tried to persuade him. "Xiaogua, just listen to Sister Wan. Don't force yourself. I think you should first gain popularity so you'll have more choices. Then choose a good script and act well. Use your acting skills to win over the director and audience. The result will be the same. As long as you practice your acting skills well and perform well, who will remember whether you became the best actor through singing or acting?" Ding Xiang's words were effective. Guazi thought about it carefully and realized that he had been thinking too much before, so he agreed. Later that day, Yang Huan came back from her tutoring class. When she heard about it, she said happily, "Xiaogua is going to sing. Brother, I want to watch it too. I haven't seen a concert before." Yang Yi waved his hand nonchalantly and said, "If you want to go, then let's go together. Ding Xiang will go too. You can accompany Huan Huan." "Ah." Ding Xiang heard it and waved her hand in a panic. "No, I still have to look after the coffee shop. I can't leave." Yang Yi shook his head and said with a smile, "The coffee shop can open anytime. Since everyone is going to Yangcheng, let's go together. I can't leave you alone. Sister Ding Xiang, come with me. We can even stay in the same hotel room. It won't be a waste." Yang Huan giggled as she pestered Ding Xiang. "Just treat it as a business trip." "Yes, a business trip. Didn't Murphy say that she wanted to train you to be a manager? Don't think about being a waiter all day long. It's useless. This time, I'll give you a mission in Yangcheng. Follow Mo Xiaowan and see how she acts as a manager." Ding Xiang had no choice but to agree. Unknowingly, Yang Yi's friends were also slowly changing or improving. This change was also reflected in Yang Yi. Ever since Yang Yi's fans gathered to fight for Yang Yi, the personal website set up by Sahara Publishing for Yang Yi became an online community for them to gather. The fans discussed Yang Yi's books on it, and the site's administrator carefully divided them into different sections, so that each fan could find their own place. After all, not everyone liked drawing sword and white knight at the same time. On this day, Lu Benji visited again, and relayed to Yang Yi the voices of Yang Yi's fans on the website. There's a fan called Mu Yuchen who opened an invitation, calling for everyone to come build the building, so that you can see the cries of everyone wanting you to hold a signing event. Lu Benji took out his computer and opened the backend data. He told Yang Yi, "As of now, this post has more than 20 million comments and more than 3.1 million IDs have left comments on this post." That was more than 3 million people who exceeded the miracle of 20 million comments. Yang Yi was a little surprised when he saw it. He looked at Lu Benji and asked, "Do I have that many fans?" "Yes. And you don't even know how much your book sales have increased after your relationship with Miss Mo was exposed. Even the 2 books from last year have sold close to 3 million new copies in Sahara's online store this month," Lu Benji said with a flushed face. Yang Yi had underestimated the power of fans and the influence of gossip in the entertainment industry. In the past, Yang Yi's name was only known in a small and very close circle of fans. Now he was a household name. Of course, Yang Yi did not care too much about that. He was more concerned about the voices of his fans. "Should I hold a signing?" Yang Yi asked hesitantly. "How can one signing be enough? With your current popularity, you can definitely hold a national signing tour," Lu Benji said excitedly. "Where do I have so much time?" Yang Yi waved his hand and said with a bitter smile. "How about this? I have some personal matters to attend to during this period of time. When I'm done, you guys can help me arrange a few signing events. I definitely can't cover everything, so I can only go to a few big cities and meet with them." His fans have helped him a lot, but Yang Yi still pretended to be cold and ignored them. That would be too unreasonable. Although it was a little regretful, Lu Benji was already satisfied when he saw Yang Yi relenting. You're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.